2, 1.
Good evening, everyone. This is High Point Mayor Jay Wagner. I want to thank everyone for attending tonight's regular council meeting, our first meeting in the month of May 2nd. For those listening online, I am present at City Hall along with Councilman Johnson, Brett Moore, Mayor Pro Tem Monica Peters, Chris Williams, Wesley Hudson, Vic Jones, and I believe Councilman Cyril Jefferson is in the building but not currently in the room. And Michael Holmes is here as well in the building, but not yet in his seat. I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight and participating in your local government. And we will now begin the meeting with a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have several proclamations and recognitions that I would like to make before we proceed to our regular agenda. The first one is regarding a member of our Human Relations Commission. I was told the correct pronunciation of this is Abai Gade. Did I get that right? Is Abai here? Not here. Okay. All right. Well, whereas Abai Gade was born in Mekelle, Tigray, Ethiopia, on September 27, 1967, as the fourth child of Lemlem Gebreji and the late Gade Mengistu. I'm sure I just butchered that, but I'm doing my best. Whereas, after immigrating to the United States in 1989 amidst the tumultuous Ethiopian Civil War, Abai earned his Bachelor of Science degree in engineering from North Carolina A&T State University in 1996. And his United States citizenship in 1997. And whereas Abai was a loyal and expert colleague, first for Winston-Salem's Carter G. Woodson School as their IT director, where he laid the foundation for their entire computer network, and then for the next 23 years for National General Insurance as a systems engineer. Whereas Abai served for 9 years on the city's Human Relations Commission, being appointed in 2006, by the High Point City Council and serving as the first commissioner from the city's vibrant Ethiopian community. And whereas Abai, who passed away on May 30th, 2022, was a loving husband to Janaea Dudley Gade and a caring mentor who was cherished by his family, church, friends, and soccer teammates. Now, therefore, I, J.W. Wagner, Mayor of the City of High Point, North Carolina, do hereby commend Mr. Abai Gade for his years of dedicated service to the City of High Point and recognize his devotion to his family and his fellow residents. Next is a proclamation.
Are there any family members?
Are there family members here or? Okay. Okay, sorry. I'll come down.
Thank you.
This proclamation is in regard to Children's Mental Health Month. Whereas our community's children are the City of High Point's greatest asset, and their well-being is vital to our current and future success, prosperity, and quality of life. All children deserve to have a safe, stable, nurturing, and healthy home and community that fosters their well-being. And whereas many agencies throughout High Point work together to positively impact the lives of children and families, including but not limited to the Kellen Foundation, the Resilient Guilford Network, the Guilford County Trauma Provider Network, Resilience High Point, and the Guilford County Family Justice Center High Point. Guilford County's Department of Health and Human Services, who work to strengthen resilience in children and families impacted by violence through a coordinated community response team of victim advocates, law enforcement, healthcare professionals, local trauma treatment providers, and human service agencies to address the needs of children exposed to violence and trauma. Whereas effective child abuse prevention strategies succeed because of partnerships created among residents, human service agencies, schools, faith communities, healthcare providers, civic organizations, law enforcement agencies, and the business community. And whereas the City of High Point supports the efforts of national, state, and local partners and asks every citizen to actively engage in public and private efforts to prevent child abuse, High Point is committed to starting conversations, taking appropriate action, and supporting one another to create a safe, stable, and nurturing community for all. And whereas with leadership, dedication, and encouragement, there is evidence that we can be successful in preventing child abuse in High Point through increased education, awareness, and community involvement. Now, therefore, I, J.W. Wagner, Mayor of the City of High Point, do hereby proclaim April 2022 as Child Abuse Prevention Month and call upon all citizens, community agencies, faith groups, medical facilities, elected leaders, and businesses to raise the awareness and increase their participation in our efforts to support families, prevent child abuse, and strengthen the community. Is there someone here to accept this?
From the foundation.
And the next proclamation is regarding Municipal Clerks Week. Whereas the office of the municipal clerk, a time-honored and vital part of local government, exists throughout the world, and whereas the office of the municipal clerk is the oldest among public servants, and whereas the office of the municipal clerk provides the professional link between the citizens, the local governing bodies, and agencies of government at other levels, and whereas municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all, and whereas the municipal clerk serves as the information center on functions of local government and community, and whereas municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the office of the municipal clerk through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, and the annual meetings of their state, provincial, county, and international professional organizations. And whereas it is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishments of the office of the municipal clerk. Now, therefore, I, J.W. Wagner, Mayor of the City of High Point, do hereby proclaim the week of May 1st through 7th, 2022 as Professional Municipal Clerks Week, and further extend appreciation to our professional municipal clerk, Lisa Veerling, and our professional municipal deputy clerk, Mary S. Brooks, and to all professional municipal clerks for the vital services they perform and the exemplary dedication to the communities they represent. been with us quite that long, but Mary is very dedicated and I believe received her municipal clerk certification while working here. And she also serves our country in the reserves, right, Army Reserves. And she'll be going, I think, for some military training this week. And so we're very proud of her, not only for her dedication to the city, but also for her dedication to our country through her service. Hear, hear.
Here, here.
All right. Lastly, this resolution is for Public Service Week. Whereas public employees are responsible for providing, planning, implementing, and responding to public service needs in our community, and all people benefit from the public service provided by dedicated public employees. And whereas public service is a noble calling where people choose to spend a portion or all of their career building community, contributing to the public good, and improving the well-being of our communities. And whereas this year the employees of the city endured the unprecedented challenges of the global pandemic and economic upheaval, manifested both at work and in community, with health concerns, economic instability, family responsibilities, emotional labor, and workload burdens. And whereas public employees persevered to serve the residents of the city, often the same communities they are a part of, while exemplifying consistency, professionalism, and provided continuity of essential city services, all while caring for residents' needs in an unpredictable time. And whereas Public Service Recognition Week provides an opportunity to recognize the work and dedication of the people who serve our communities, and whereas the employees of the City of High Point are to be recognized for the significant contributions they make and challenges they face every day, commended for their accomplishments, and are offered the sincere gratitude of the Mayor and City Council on behalf of all of the people of our great community for efforts to serve, protect, and promote the health, safety, and welfare of the residents, businesses, and visitors to our community. Therefore, be it resolved that I, J.W. Wagner, Mayor of the City of High Point, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim the week of May 1st through 7th, 2022 as Public Service Recognition Week in the City of High Point, and encourage all High Point citizens to recognize and honor the contributions and dedication of government employees to our communities. I suppose I'll present this to you. On behalf of all of our city employees, I will be presenting this to our city manager, Tasha Lynn.
We should have photobombed.
We should have. I thought about it.
Okay, so next on our agenda is our strategic plan update. We'll begin with Councilmember Chris Williams updating us on our blight reduction strategic plan.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Get my stuff together here. The following is for the activity, is covering the activity of the month of April. During that period, the local code enforcement staff processed 16 new minimum housing cases, 113 new public nuisance cases, and collected 225 signs. Additionally, during the month of April, the LCE staff recorded 19 zoning complaints. A total of 57 public nuisance cases were abated, 5 by the city, and 52 were owner abated. Two inspectors worked on Saturday morning in April 4/23 and collected 60 signs. 3 properties with ordinance passed are in the appeal period. Demolition bids will be requested when the appeal period has expired. 7 properties have been bidded out for demolition. There are 6 housing cases with an ordinance passed for demolition waiting for repairs to be completed. 337 Wingo, 210 Underhill, 1004 Prospect, 524 Cross, 1113 Jefferson, and 2206 Gable Way. One inspector position remains open. During the report period, there were 500 total active cases, 253 active minimum housing cases, 145 active public nuisance cases, and 102 active zoning cases. Now we'll turn the floor over to Lori Loosemore.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, City Manager. Tonight, luckily we get to continue the housing repairs being made in High Point. It is our growing season, so we expect the numbers for public nuisance cases definitely increase over the next several months. But on this case, it was reported to us on the address is 1004 Brentwood. It was reported to us on November 14th from the Fire Department of 2018. We held a hearing in January of 2019, and we issued an order for the owner to repair or demolish it. And it had an expiration date of March 16th of 2019. And this is what the house looked like at that time. It did get sold twice. It was sold June 19th of 2020. That person did not make the repairs, so it was sold again January 20th of 2021. That owner pulled a permit on March 10th of 2021, and then they just recently received their certificate of occupancy for the property, and this is what it looks like now. And I apologize, I forgot to find out, or I forgot, one of the two, if it was going to be owner-occupied or rental, or if they were going to sell it. That's it.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Mayor, that's all we have.
Okay. Next strategic plan update will come from Councilmember Michael Holmes, who is the chairman of our Marketing and Branding Task Force.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We recently had the pleasure of hosting Civic Brand, who is going to lead our marketing and branding effort. We were able to get them involved in several events that were taking place during the time opening weekend of the Rockers. We were able to introduce them to tours at Congdon Yards, Stock and Grain, our food hall, give them a tour of that, and then introduce them to many other local stakeholders. Ryan Ferguson, Melody Burnett, and I had a chance to begin the documentation process of this branding effort. There's going to be a film documentary at the end of this, and we also will have a podcast that will run during this time called That's My Point. We were able to record the first episode, and we will soon be launching the website dedicated to the project. It's brandinghighpoint.com. At that point, we encourage all citizens of High Point to go onto brandinghighpoint.com and take a survey. We want to make sure that everybody's voice is heard in the message that comes out of this branding effort. So whether you're in North High Point or on South Side, we want to hear from you about why you love High Point, what High Point could be doing better, and we just want to make sure that we're speaking with a cohesive voice. So brandinghighpoint.com, it's a very quick survey, and we look forward to hearing from all corners of High Point on how we can spread the message about the great things that High Point is doing and the direction that High Point is going in, the positive things that are happening here.
Is that, did you say it's going to be up the website, or it currently is up?
It is currently up and launched, so I just went there and it's already open. So if you guys get a chance, go to brandinghighpoint.com if you have any problems. Managing Director Jerron Hollis is the guy I'm going to put the bullseye on, so we can help you with that. So that's brandinghighpoint.com.
Thank you, Councilman Holmes. Next on the agenda is our public comment period. Our policy states that anybody can come forward, speak for 3 minutes on any item that is not on the agenda for public hearing. If you're here to speak on an item that is subject of a public hearing, if you hold your comments till then, we'll take them at that time. As of right now, no one has signed up for the public comment period, but if there's anyone who would like to speak, you can come forward one by one to the podium, give us your name and address for our record. And I already see Melody Burnett coming forward.
I'm not
Thank you,
shy.
Melody.
I came right on up as soon as
right.
you said. Melody Burnett, 1634 North Main Street. For every year in early May, our Visit High Point team asks our mayor to read the obligatory proclamation claiming this time is National Travel and Tourism Week. And we know that Mayor Wagner would have done a fantastic job lifting the industry and reading that proclamation. However, this year we wanted to do something a little different and deliver that message very personally. We want to formally thank our city leaders during this most notorious time, May 1st through the 7th, as National Travel and Tourism Week, as this year's theme is #Future of Travel. Your leadership and partnership and sharing in our mission to position High Point as a vibrant destination that visitors will enjoy and that locals will want to promote not only makes for a fruitful visitor economy, but also a great place to live. Thanks to our city council, our city leaders, our private businesses and investors, we're well on our way to have a solid local economy through the future of travel, benefiting our city on the move. In just 2 years, we're starting to see rebound stats that trends towards a strong economic tourism recovery that once devastated by COVID-19. In 2020, Visit NC calculated a decrease of direct tourism spending by 47%, dropping Guilford County from the 3rd largest county in state tourism spending now to the 5th largest. Although the official 2021 economic impact numbers have not been formally announced by the state, we can currently trend a rebound where tourism occupancy tax are only 2% off from 2019, which was the best visitor economy year to date, totaling over $1.7 million. We are experiencing more visitation from leisure travelers, day trippers, a 200-mile drive market, youth and amateur sports education market, home furnishings, business travel, and spectator event goers. Our ever-evolving High Point has the attention of small businesses, outside investors, curious visitors, and now new talent that calls High Point home. This spring has been active as we just celebrated the opening of the Nito and Mariana Quabain Children's Museum just this weekend. It's only been open for 3 days. The positive reviews are off the charts online and through social media, and our office has been fielding those phone calls and locals and visitors who are eager to explore. High Point University continues to set the bar high, growing the school's offerings to merit more direct tourism economic impact that benefits our hotels, restaurants, and retail. Their climatic impact, of course, this weekend will be commencement, where we can expect over 10,000 attendees to sell out our hospitality partners for area celebrations. Earlier this spring, we hosted the North Carolina largest rowing event, the North Carolina Rowing Championship, that brought close to 4,000 attendees. We hosted our annual Spring High Point Market, which is close to our 2019 registration numbers. And we also welcomed Ziggy's Home to host 1,500 concert goers April the 22nd to enjoy Blackberry Smoke, where 90% were from outside of High Point. Council leaders, I want to thank you for making this bold position to make our city a destination. Thank you for taking the interest in our work seriously by attending our stakeholder meetings, by coming to our board committees. Thank you for supporting our industry partners like you did last week, attending the J.H. Adams expansion. Thank you for liking and sharing on social media. And thank you for supporting our future of tourism, as our High Point is very bright. I cut out half this letter because I heard a beat. But how do I compete with, Municipal Clerks Week and City Employee Week? So anyway, I had to do it this way. Thank you all.
Thank you, Melody. Is there anyone else who would like to speak during public comment?
Good afternoon. My name is Jackie Astrup. I reside at 3935 Fountain Village Lane, High Point, North Carolina. And I noticed that Winfield is on here as rezoning for a particular parcel, which is behind my home at 3935 Fountain Village Lane, and the address that is 1559 Ski Club Road. Since the actual plan that they have for that area is not on the agenda, but only the zoning portion is on the agenda, then I feel that I can talk about why I am here today. So Winfield has been trying to build income-based housing behind my residence for the past 3 years, and twice it was rejected. But for some reason this time, the Planning and Zoning Committee decided that by unanimous vote, they agreed to have the particular apartment complex to be built. When we met with Winfield Properties, they told us that it was going to be a 55-unit, 55 parking space senior development. But when I read in the Enterprise on Sunday, there are going to be 72 units, 72 parking spaces. It's on 5.83 acres. And the space between our development, our townhomes, and the field which they are proposing to purchase would be this side to where Mr. Holmes is sitting right here. That's the back of my patio with my fencing, and it's only 50 feet from the actual townhome development. It would go all the way down the full side of the development. There would be, they said that they would leave the trees if they were 6 inches in diameter, but when I read that, what they proposed to us in the paper was completely different. I felt that I had to voice my opinion on what makes it, through the Planning and Zoning Committee, why did they unanimously vote to have this particular development built in between two communities, one across the street that has only one exit and entrance. My community only has one exit and entrance. And everything on Ski Club from East Chester all the way down is a one-way. I have to make a U-turn out of my development, a right turn out of my development, go down to a block, make a U-turn, come back up to East Chester, pass my house, just almost to get to the grocery store. So now you're going to add, according to what was in the paper, 77 more units of housing, 77 vehicles. And if it is for seniors who are 55 and older, 55 and older seniors work. They have vehicles, they drive. That particular area has 2 nursing homes, a retirement community, a daycare, an EMT, emergency facility. How is it that they're going to be able to have all of this and keep the people in that community safe? The nursing homes, the daycare, the retirement community. There's no, the EMT also has to make a U-turn to get to wherever these facilities are whenever there's an emergency called. So according to the first DOT plan from the state, there were supposed to have been soft mediums for emergency vehicles, but they're not. They're all the same height. I've seen people cross over those mediums with their cars, which is a very dangerous situation. And when you're talking about
Ma'am,
3 communities,
your 3 minutes
okay,
is up.
3
I need you to
communities
finish,
making a
please.
U-turn out of the same development, that's going to create a major traffic problem. So I just ask that you consider this before you make your approval of the Winfield property and what they are planning on doing with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, just for clarification, I know we're going to talk about this on the 16th, but this project was not denied twice in 2019 or 2020. The application was withdrawn in 2019, and due to COVID delays, it did not make the deadlines in 2020, so it's never come before Planning and Zoning, and it's never come before Council.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak during public comment?
Hello, my name is Rachel Anderson, and I live at 706 Delmont Street.
Rachel, are you here for one of the items for public hearing?
Yes.
Okay, I would ask that you reserve your
I'm
comments
sorry, I
for
couldn't hear
time.
that part.
Yep.
Thank
We'll
you.
let you speak, don't worry, you'll get your chance. Is there anyone who would like to speak? 3 minutes on anything not on the agenda? Not on the agenda for public hearing? Okay, all right. Then I'm going to close the public comment portion of our agenda. Don't worry, we'll get to you. Finance Committee items are next, and for that, I'll turn the meeting over to Councilman Britt Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. One quick question. When do you want this to come in? You want to hold it to the end,
Yes,
the end of finance or the end of everything?
probably the end of everything.
Okay, thank you. Okay, folks, We had several members of the Finance Committee that were out of town. We couldn't get a quorum, so I appreciate staff staying for our presentation of these items tonight. We'll move quickly as we can. The first item on Finance Committee agenda tonight is 2022-186. This is a contract with Johnson Controls, and if my thing will come up, I'm showing Lori Russell. Hey, Lori, how are you?
Okay. What we are looking for at the library is to upgrade our current emergency exits. The building was built in 1992. The emergency exits, of which there are 15, have a push bar release with a 15-second delay. In 1992, that met code. It does not now. Also, in this time of, unfortunately, active shooters in public spaces, you are required for these doors to stand at the door and hold the bar for 15 seconds. That's not a very good situation for us now. Along with the 15 doors for emergency egress, we would also like to put the same system on 22 doors that are either currently have a keypad access or are in need of one, which brings us to a total of 37 doors on this project. Johnson Controls has given us a quote. It is on page 43 of your agenda packet. The total for that quote is $97,705.31. We do have sufficient funds in place with our State Aid to Public Libraries grant, so the funding is already there. I just need your approval to move forward.
Are there any questions for Ms. Russell? Tommy? Okay, hearing none, I'll make the motion to approve item 2022-186.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second for approval of this item. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of approval of item 2022-186, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously.
Next item is 2022-187. This has to do with our furniture market transportation grant agreement, and Angela Wines is going to share with us.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, and City Manager. This evening, I bring before you a grant agreement with Ncdot for furniture market funding in the amount of $1.7 million. We'll cover the transportation services for the October 22 and the April 2023 furniture markets. This is an annual agreement with Ncdot that has a neutral impact on next year's city budget. We're asking for authorization for the manager to enter into the agreement with Ncdot.
Comments or questions on this item? I'll make a motion to approve item 2022-187.
There's a motion and a second for approval of this item. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval of item 2022-187, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Yeah, that motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Angela. The next item is 2022-188. This is a change order request concerning our Richland Creek sewer outfall. Mr. Robbie Stone.
Yes, sir. Council, Public Services brings to you tonight change order request number 2 to Garney Companies for the Richland Creek sewer outfall. Change order number 1 was just an extension of time. This request is relating to the Richland Creek outfall, which was awarded to Garney back in August of 2021. The amount of that contract was just over $16 million, and this sewer outfall conveys approximately 5 million gallons of sewage per day to the Eastside Wastewater Treatment Plant. The scope of this project was to replace 16 aerial crossings, totaling about 5,600 feet with new 48-inch diameter pipe. And this change order includes altering the pipe saddle design for materials with a shorter lead times and adding additional protective coatings to those saddles. And this is a 3-part epoxy coating system. Funds are available in this current budget. We are requesting that council award this change order number 2, or approve this change order number 2 for Garney in the amount of $119,670.04.
Comments or questions? How's the progress of the project? And with
Yes,
all
ma'am.
things
Yes, sir.
considered, going good?
Yes, sir.
Great. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve item 2022-188.
A motion and a second for approval of this item. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval of item 2022-188, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously.
Next item is 2022-189. This is a contract consideration on a Waterview pump station improvement. Robbie,
Yes, sir.
take that.
So Public Services was looking at the Waterview Pump Station, which was constructed in 2007. It was a smaller station back then. It was in conflict with proposed Ncdot widening. The recent completion of the force main replacement, which upsized the force main from a 10-inch to a 16-inch line along Ski Club Road, and a 2017 installation of a third pump in the pump station allowed us to increase that capacity from 1,550 gallons per minute to about 2,500 gallons per minute. However, the current receiving gravity sewer, which is a 12-inch diameter along Eastchester Drive, limited the ability of that pump station for its full pumping capacity. So the proposed project will be to relocate the Waterview force main discharge to the Penny Road outfall, which is a 24-inch diameter sewer outfall, and that is near the intersection of Penny Road and Sunnybell Drive. The proposed extension will require installation of about 5,545 linear feet of 16-inch force main and 245 feet of gravity sewer, and this will begin at the intersection of Highway 68, Skeet Club, and Wendover, and terminate at the Penny Road outfall. There were 5 bidders for this project. Baker Underground was the lowest responsible bidder, and funds are available for this in the FY 21-22 budget. Public Services requesting that council approve Baker Underground Utilities, award this project to them in the amount of $2,767,305.
Any comments or questions? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve item 2022-189.
There's a motion and a second for approval of this item. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval of item 2022-189, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. Next item is 2022-190. Something we do each year is Bobby Fitzjohn will talk to us about the write-off of delinquent utility accounts receivable.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the City Council. As the Chairman said, this is an annual item that we bring to you all, just authorizing staff to write off delinquent accounts. I say this every year, we do not stop attempting to collect. If these customers come back into the city, if we're able to collect through the North Carolina debt set-off, we continue to pursue those items. In fact, these receivables were already written down as of June 30, 2021. This just allows us to remove them from the books completely. So both items are pretty much the same story. The first is utility accounts. The collections staff in the customer service department does a great job. On average, they collect about 99.5% of our utilities. However, the uncollected amount is still a large amount at about $839,525 from the 2017-2018 fiscal year. So that would be the amount we're asking you to write off in this item.
Any comments or questions on this item? I'll make a motion to approve item 2022-190.
Second.
The motion for approval of item 2022-190 and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval of that item, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously.
Next item is 2022-191, and Mr. Fitzjohn kind of alluded to that, but if you want to give the specific numbers on that real quick.
Sure. So this is an item that has fluctuated over the years, and so I apologize for bringing an item of $992 for you all to write off. In the future, staff will consider combining these with the utility write-off. I think in the past there's been larger items on this list, so it's been separate, but we'll certainly look into that in the future. Again, this item would just authorize staff to write off $992 in miscellaneous receivables from the fiscal 2017-2018 fiscal year.
If there's no questions, I'll make a motion to approve item 2022-191.
Second. So motion and a second for approval of item 2022-191. Is there any discussion or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval of this item, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Next item, 2022-192, is the resolution of a sale of city-owned property. Kim Thor, I'm showing that attorney's got that one.
Good evening, everybody.
You take it.
Farzana Nassar has offered a bid of $12,000 for a city-owned property located at 210 J Place. The property is approximately .16 acre in size, or 6973 square feet. We're asking for council approval to sell this at the upset bid process.
Any comments or questions on this item? Hearing none, I'll make the motion to approve item 2022-192.
There's a motion and a second for approval of item 2022-192. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. The next item, 2022-193, is concerning a donation of real property.
The administrator for the estate of John David Hayworth Sr., who's deceased, and the property owner of the 800 Woodbury Street, has offered to donate the property to the city, which is about 7,405 square feet, or .17 acres. And we'd like to get city council approval for a resolution to accept that.
Any comments or questions? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve item 2022-193. Second.
Motion and a second for approval of item 2022-193. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. The next item is 2022-194. This is Ncdot easement request.
The North Carolina Department of Transportation has requested the city to grant a temporary drainage easement at the corner along the front of the city-owned vacant property at 4501 Johnson Street. This is for the widening of a portion of Johnson Street and Sandy Ridge Road. It will be for extra work for a drainage construction in the existing right-of-way. Council approval is requested to dedicate the easement.
Comments or questions? I'll make a motion to approve 2022-194.
Second?
There's a motion and a second for this item. Is there any discussion or questions? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of approval of item 2022-194, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously.
The next item is 2022-195. This is a resolution on the sale of city-owned property.
The Assemblies of Christ Church Ministries has offered $4,000 for a city-owned lot at 229 Winley Street. This property is .18 acres in size, or 7,841 square feet. City council approval is requested to sell this through the upset bid procedure.
Any questions or comments on this item? Then I'll make a motion to approve item 2022-195.
Second.
There's a motion and a second for approval of item 2022-195. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously.
If I haven't missed anything, I believe that's all for finance, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Moore. Next on the agenda are Community Development Committee items, and I will recognize Councilmember Chris Williams for that portion of the agenda.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Upon request from staff, I'd like to place item 2022-198, demolition of dwelling 900 Anderson into pending.
Okay. There's a motion to place that item in pending. Is there a second? There's a second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of placing item 2022-198 into pending, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mayor. Do you want me to go on, have the other one pulled first before
Sure,
we go into the?
that's
Okay.
fine.
And then, once again, upon request of staff, I'd like to pull item 2022-1-64, ordinance demolition of dwelling 524 Roy Avenue out and return it to staff.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to pull item 2022-164 out and return it to staff, in other words, take it off the agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of that item, of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes.
All right, and finally, item 2022-199, ordinance, demolition of dwelling, 1222 Carter Street, adoption of ordinance to demo. I turn the floor over to Lori.
Good evening again, Mayor, City Council, City Manager. This was a complaint we received about the condition of the house. We went out and did an inspection on October 22nd of 2019. We held a hearing on November 6th of 2019 that no one appeared for. We issued an order to repair or demolish on November 20th of 2019 with a compliance date of December 23rd, 2019. This property was in the, I got this was a little tricky. So it was a couple that owned it, Mr. Maddie and Miss Maddie, and they did a quick claim deed and transferred it to Miss Maddie. And then Miss Maddie passed away, but we did have a list pendens recorded on it. So we had originally notified Mr. Maddie of the issues with the property. And then also she had a will leaving the house to him as well. And we have talked to him a few different times, and he would state that he was planning to fix the property. The most recent, we spoke to him in February of 2022. He said he had a contractor who'd be going out to give him a quote to make repairs, and requested that we email him a list of the violations. But this is what the house looks like. Last time we were in a couple of months ago and took pictures, and they are not delinquent on any property taxes.
All right, is there any questions for staff? All right, is there anyone here to speak for or against this item? All right, seeing none, I will make the motion to approve item 2022-197. I'm sorry, I did the wrong thing. I do apologize, lost my place. Item 2022-199, ordinance demolition of dwelling, 1222 Carter Street.
Second. There's a motion and a second for approval of the ordinance for demolition. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of approval of the ordinance for demolition of dwelling 1222 Carter Street, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously.
That's all we have, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda are the Prosperity and Livability Committee items, and I'll recognize Councilmember Hudson for that portion of the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have a report from our One High Point Commission. I believe John Hollis will be giving us that. Before he begins, on a personal note, could I ask the members of the committee that have been working on this, there are many of them in the hall, so could those members stand up so we could recognize you? It includes Councilmember Holmes, and Jelani, you can stand up too. Our staff members as well. Thank you all. So thank you all very much for your diligent work on this. It's been a pleasure and honor to do this work with you. And now I'll turn it over to John Hollis.
Thank you, Councilmember Hudson. Mayor, members of council, at this time we want to talk about the next step in the One High Point Commission process that started last year, really this time, May 2021. Many discussions and revisions, resolution outlines. One of the things that the resolution calls for is a selection of 9 residents and 2 alternates by the selection committee, as well as 2 appointees to the One High Point Commission from the NAACP and 2 from the City Council. After the result of submission of applications and interest from the community, the selection committee has come forward with the following 9 names for consideration for appointment to the One High Point Commission: Joseph Alston, Dawn Alston Page, Lavelle McMichael, Megan Oglesby, Doris Patrick, Janet Riley Wright, Robert Sims, Bridget Tolliver, and Robert Williamson. In addition, the NAACP's 2 appointees are Courtney Austin Wilson and Charles Hensley. The High Point residents that will be the non-voting alternates are Mr. Willie Davis and Constance Reynolds. And lastly, as we understand it, the two members of the City Council that will be participating on the One High Point Commission are Councilmember Michael Holmes from Ward 6 and Councilmember Tyrone Johnson, our at-large, one of our at-large members. So at this point, as the resolution states, the staff recommendation is that the council will consider and accept the appointments, the names that I've just read, to the One High Point Commission. And per the resolution, from the time that the resolution is adopted, there's a 120-day clock, if you will, that starts. With the adoption of the resolution being on February 7th, the other staff request is that the mayor establish a date and time for the first meeting for the commission. I'd be glad to answer any questions, but that's what I wanted to report out today.
Explain the role of the non-voting alternates, like when would they step in and then what would be their role?
Can you, I missed the
Can you
first part.
explain the role of the non-voting alternates and what their role would be?
Yeah, the non-voting alternates would be two members from the community that would fill in the event that there was one of the 9 that were selected that were not able to fulfill their duties. So if one of the 9 decided for whatever, family reasons, medical reasons, they could no longer participate on the One High Point Commission, one of those 2 non-voting alternates would fill in for that person. So they would be expected to stay abreast of what's going on, understand what's going on with the meetings, so that in the event they had to join, say, midstream, 5-6 months in, that they would be apprised of everything that was going on with the commission. So they would then become voting members. They would, in the absence of one of the original 9, if that makes sense. Did I answer your question?
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Hollis, how many applications did we get?
Ooh, our applications that we got in, I defer to the clerk. We got some names that came in initially that were not eligible because of their residential status, but I think our final number, Lisa, ended up at 19.
I think it's 21.
21, okay, yes. Other questions?
Anyone else?
If no questions, I will make a motion to approve 2022-197, which is the adoption of the candidates for appointment to the One High Point Commission.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. I have one question. As far as the resolution, as far as the establishment of the time and date for the first meeting, my assumption is that I just do that. It doesn't have to be approved by council.
Correct. That's the first Tuesday of the month at 6 o'clock is what we've been meeting, so that's already established, but it can be anything. It is your discretion.
Okay. All right, there's a motion and a second for approval of this item. Is there any further discussion? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor of approval, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously. I will go ahead and state then that the first meeting of the One High Point Commission will be on June 2nd at 6 p.m. in City Hall.
June 2nd. 7th, sorry. Tuesday, Thursday. The 7th is a Tuesday. 2nd on a Thursday?
I was informed that the group had come to a consensus
Second is on
I was just making sure you hadn't misunderstood.
that everybody could attend on the 2nd.
That's perfect.
Okay,
Sorry.
yeah. June 2nd at 6 p.m. at City Hall. Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Hollis. Nothing further from P&L.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next are the planning and development items. I'll be handling those. The first one is a right-of-way encroachment. This is a request by Peters Holdings LLC. I'll turn it over to staff. This is not a public hearing item, so.
All right, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Yeah, this application is right-of-way encroachment. The applicant is requesting permission to allow the installation of a 4-foot, I'm sorry, let me back up. This is, the property is at 909 Forest Hill Drive. The applicant is requesting permission to allow the installation of a 4-foot-high aluminum fence with 4 entry columns within the Emery Wood Drive right-of-way. The Technical Review Committee reviewed this request and determined that the proposed encroachment would not affect public safety or interfere with any maintenance needs. That Emery Wood Drive there is quite short in distance, and I believe there's only one other home that uses that access. The location map and exhibit map are included within your staff reports. Staff recommends approval of the requested right-of-way encroachment with the conditions as depicted on the easement exhibit drawings. And I believe that the applicant is here if there are any questions, but I'm happy to answer any questions of staff.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anyone on council have any questions for staff or the applicant about this item? Okay. Hearing none, I'll make a motion for approval of the right-of-way encroachment, case RE 22-10. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second for approval of this item. Is there any discussion? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. We have 2 items on for public hearing. Both are regarding Winfield properties. The first one will be the case on Ski Club Road. I will open the public hearing and recognize Herb Shannon of our staff for a presentation. After that, we will hear from the applicant, and then the floor will be open to the community for comments.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Herb Shannon, Senior Planner with the City of High Point Planning and Development Department, and I'll provide you with a summary of this case and the staff recommendation. This is a request to rezone a 5.8 acre parcel from the current conditional use office institutional district to a conditional zoning office institutional district. The site is located along the north side of Ski Club Road, approximately 240 feet west of Fountain Grove Drive. And that area highlighted on the map in blue is the site in question. The primary intent of this application is to update zoning conditions that were established on this property when it was initially annexed and established city zoning in 1993. I would note for the members of the public, this request did not trigger a requirement for a traffic impact analysis study. And anytime there is a request for a use that's going to have residential uses, we include in the staff report, and that's in the table, impacts from schools, and we forwarded that information to Guilford County's Facilities Management. And the information in that report as to school impact is directly from Guilford County Schools. In the early 1990s, this parcel formed the northern edge of the city limits in this area. At that time, the only adjacent development was the Birchwood single-family subdivision to the west. The rest of the lands abutting the site were undeveloped. During the past 29 years, the city limits have been extended northward to Gallimore Dairy Road and to I-40. And I also would note in 2000, as part of the land use plan evaluation, the land use designation for this site was updated. This site was previously designated for industrial use. The land use plan was updated for this area to be designated for office type use. You can see that area highlighted in blue where the zoning site is located. It was part of a larger area in 2000 when the land use plan was changed from industrial to office. With the surrounding lands now zoned and developed to support a variety of residential and office-related uses, the applicant is requesting rezoning to develop the site with a multi-story, multi-family use. Although that is their intent, anytime there is a zoning application, staff looks at all the uses that are permitted in that zoning district unless uses are specifically prohibited, or the applicant offers a condition to prohibit that use. So we looked at this for the applicant's proposal for multifamily, but we also looked at the other uses that are permitted in the office institutional district. The current OI district on this site allows a wide variety of institutional, healthcare, social service, personal service, and residential uses at a density up to 16 units per acre. All of these uses are currently permitted on the site today. The primary changes with this updated zoning conditions are as follows. First, in 1993, there was no standards in the development ordinance regarding exterior lighting. With the adoption of the 2017 update to the development ordinance, there are now standards for exterior lighting that are more stringent than those previous conditions. So those previous lighting conditions are being removed, and the current standards of the ordinance will be met. Permanent landscaping, the current zoning approval only had a provision for higher landscaping standards along the western boundary of the site. Under this updated zoning proposal, the applicants offered a condition for higher landscaping to be provided around the perimeter of the site, and they've also included a condition that 50% of that planting material is to consist of evergreen materials. As far as building height, the development ordinance permits a building height of 50 feet for the abutting single-family developments to the west, and allows a height of up to 80 feet for the office institutional zoning to the north and east, even though they're developed with residential uses. The applicant is requesting to remove the current condition regarding a restriction to a one-story height restriction. I would note we do not use the term one-story anymore because that is very imprecise. And you could have a situation where you can have a one-story structure that is the same height as some of the surrounding uses. Yes, you're not going to do a residential structure that high, but the office institutional district allows office uses, institutional uses, and other uses which could have heights of 30 to 40 feet depending on how they're constructed. Under this application, the applicant is offered a condition to meet the same height restrictions as the abutting single family, and that is a condition they've proposed to limit building heights to 50 feet to match the abutting limits of the single family development to the west. Key items to point out from the staff analysis and findings. As for compatibility with the surrounding area, this site is part of a larger 60-acre area that is designated by the land use plan for office. This zoning request does not introduce any land uses that are not currently allowed, and allowable uses of the OI district are compatible with the surrounding area, which is a mixture of office, townhomes, single family, and life care or assisted living. As conditioned, building height will be as permitted on the adjacent single-family parcels, and they have offered conditions for higher landscaping to help with compatibility of surrounding uses. Also, required standards of the development ordinance pertaining to landscaping, screening of trash receptacles, exterior lighting will further mitigate impacts. As I previously noted, a traffic impact analysis was not required. The Transportation Department has looked at this and noted no transportation issues, and I also note that the recent upgrade of Skeet Club Road from a 2-lane to 4 lanes will also assist with any traffic impacts. Finally, as far as mitigating impacts to adjacent properties, the zoning request does not change the current allowable uses, and the applicant has offered conditions pertaining to building height and landscapings to mitigate any negative impact to adjacent property owners. Therefore, the Planning and Development Department is recommending approval of this request to rezone this site to a conditional zoning office institutional district. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed this request at their April 26th public hearing, and recommended approval by a vote of 9-0. The Commission stated that the request is consistent with adopted policy guidance because the site is within an area along Ski Club Road, the Ski Club Road corridor that is classified by the land use plan as office, and that allowable uses and density of the proposed office district are supported by adopted policy guidance that are established for this area. Furthermore, the Commission stated that the request is reasonable and in the public interest because the requested CZOI district does not change allowable uses or density. Furthermore, conditions offered by the applicant and the standards of the development ordinance provide greater lighting, landscaping standards, and allows development to be similar as to what is permitted on adjacent lands. That is a quick summary. I would note about the prior applications, just a clarification. The 2019 application was submitted for this site. That did proceed to Planning and Zoning Commission, and at that time they recommended denial, but it was withdrawn prior to going to City Council. And as Councilmember Jones has noted, Their previous request was right when the COVID situation started, and they withdrew that request after several of the public hearings were postponed. That is a quick summary of this application. Are there any questions of staff at this time?
Herbert, Councilman Moore, what's the threshold or requirement that, when a project comes to staff that triggers a TIA, traffic analysis?
I'll let the Transportation Department address that information.
Greg Venable, Interim Transportation Director for City of High Point. The number of trips are 150 trips in the peak hour. Yeah, they're like 7 to 9, and then 4 to 6. Those peak hours, you have to have
150 trips
150 trips.
Okay.
Yeah, vehicle trips. Yeah.
per hour,
In the peak hour, yes.
in the peak hour?
Yeah,
And that wasn't recognized here as needed?
it was not.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff before we hear from the applicant? Okay, Mr. Stone?
Thank you, council members. My name is Craig Stone with Winfield Properties, 5614 Riverdale Drive, Jamestown. Thank you for the opportunity to present Walnut Ridge. This proposal is currently proposed up to yes. Thank you. This proposal is up to 84 units. I think when we did present to the local community folks, we did present up to 84 units. You may be aware in the past, we have presented and been involved working with the community with Admiral Point, Addington, Kirkwood, Hartley, Avondale, and Abbey. Those have went through competitive financing process that is dictated as we've moved through. There has been adjustments. So in this case, was proposed up to 84 units, and then that was shown to the community when we presented that. I did hear earlier mention of 55. I think that maybe we target folks that are 55 and older. That may be where the number 55 came up, not sure. But I think it was presented actually a little bit more than what was mentioned earlier at 84 units. It likely will go down from there. As you know, we have done a number of properties in the community. One of the things about this particular community in this particular location, we have sought counsel and talked to local folks a number of different times. The original applications were for family. That was one of the concerns. This particular application is elderly. We are proposing, while there is a height that we asked and worked with staff on of, I believe, 50 feet, our actual application and design is 2-story. So one of the things as we've moved through the process, we've tried to make adjustments and do different things to this particular application and hope that certainly that is a little bit better than what was initially presented. This would amount to a $13 million investment and a continuation in affordable in the community, something that a lot of the studies have shown there's an overwhelming need for. As you know, we use brick, hardy plank materials, such as siding, metal, stairs, those kind of things. I hope the architectural design and long-term durability of the products proposed are one that meets all of the standards and is something that everyone can be proud of in the community. Not sure what other questions may be at this point. Wanted to present myself and see if I could answer any questions at this time.
Any questions for the applicant?
How many units were we at in 2019? Well, it was 180 something, right?
I think maybe we started off at 120 with that particular application as a family community. This one is up to 84. The process is going through right now. It likely could go to 60 units, but we do currently have it proposed as up to 84 units.
And I believe the previous plan you had more of the dwellings towards the exterior of the property with parking internally?
One of the things that moving from a family design to an elderly design, it allowed us to go as best as possible loading towards the center of this particular parcel. So there would be parking and then buffers, and then we've also indicated that whatever over 6 inches in gauge material, plant material that's there, trees, we would keep those.
Any other questions?
Any other major changes that I think you've gone through, but from your 2019 design, I know you got a lot of feedback, and you didn't get through P and Z.
We did.
But it's my understanding you've made substantial changes based on what was asked of you from the community.
We did make substantial changes. I would say the most significant change was moving from a family development to an elderly. I think that there was some questions about children, things of that nature. In doing so, as moving to an elderly, it changed design, it changed a number of different things, which eliminated a number of concerns. And one thing I would point out, there is no direct connectivity to any of the adjacent residential parcels. The only connectivity is to Skeet Club Road. And, it's not up to us. We have a current proposed design, but that design must go through a rigorous TRC process with staff. It goes through DOT, those types of things. And as those checks and balances come out, it'll be vetted, and each of the departments will have input related to it.
Mr. Stone, you went from 3 stories to 2 stories as well, though, right?
I'm so sorry, I did not
Did you
hear.
go from 3 stories to 2 stories?
We
as
did.
well?
We went from 3 stories to 2 stories.
That was one of the main objections in 2019, was that you got at most 2-story houses over there on Angel Court and all those neighborhoods in that area, Fountain Village. Then all of a sudden, they're looking out their backyard at a 3-story structure. And I think one lady even commented, they've been looking right in my windows. And so I think Winfield did a great job listening to the feedback and accommodating those concerns.
And Greg, if I could make one more comment, and just tell me if this is correct or not. I did talk to somebody on P&Z just to kind of ask about, and his comment was that by law, you're required to say 55 and up. Like, you can't just randomly say 63 and up. It has to be 55 and up. But the majority of the residents that he's found in those elderly areas are around 75. Would you find that to be accurate?
I wouldn't.
Okay.
We have a number of independent living communities that are 55, targeted to 55 and older. You actually could be a fully handicapped individual and be a little bit younger than 55, technically. But we see an age range all over the place. We have, for Admiral Point, which is not too terribly far from this location, I think 1,500 people on a wait list. So it's a very diverse age population of folks in need. We see everything from 55 to older.
So would you say because you have a wait list, you're able to determine your median age from the current wait list that you have?
No, because it just, the need is so overwhelming. It's really, by the time you go through fair housing compliance and everything, really it's more indicative of who comes in first, more so than a complete population. We have some communities that have one particular aged population and another community that may have another. It's really, there's just not enough housing.
But in order to meet the compliance requirement to be, for housing in one of these developments, you have to list that you meet the certain age requirement, correct?
Correct.
So from the data that you've collected from your applicant pool of 1,500 people, you should be able to determine your median age of the wait list.
We do not take that data and then correlate that, whether it be age or a number of demographics. It's just from a fair housing standpoint, something that we've not ever really done. So I don't have the data. It's not something that we would readily correct. You may be able to, I'm not sure legally, but we don't take it and correlate it.
How long ago did you meet with the surrounding residents of the other?
It's been within the last, it's in the last couple of months, and we gave the report to staff March.
What was the feedback recently? I mean, did you find Support, opposition? What was the?
Well, obviously, in an event like that, there's folks that are asking questions, and there were a number of folks that had questions and concerns that live in the area, and certainly respect the fact that those. And I would say there were a number of folks that did have questions because this particular parcel has sat here for some time, and they've wanted it to develop in one pattern. And so, what we do is affordable housing, and what we do is, this particular use type, so we're seeking that and trying to serve the folks that we serve. We've tried to accommodate and answer the questions and do design work as we've moved through the process, starting off with a family community at 120 and do the best we can. But at the same time, we would like and want to seek to serve the folks that we work with.
So are there any plans to take the most recent suggestions from the citizens and incorporate that into maybe adjustments, if that's possible?
Well, I think the process and how rigorous the TRC and all of the departments with what they go through, whether it be traffic, we don't have direct access to any of the residential uses in the area. So there's not us directing towards any residential use. It would be to Ski Club, and the transportation department gets involved. It's not up to us. What we submit, we start off, and then it goes through, and then they will make suggestions. I'm not sure, to be honest, as small a trip trigger as this would be, that a TIS would be amenable, but that's something that could come through the process. And there may be other items related to maybe, say, a slowdown lane or those types of things. So I think that the plan as proposed accommodates a number of those things to the point that we can. There's a point where we can't accommodate all those things, and certainly would respect that. I mean, if it is ultimately to develop what our intended use is, this site versus another, we're not going to be able to accommodate that. But I think a lot of the other items that have been talked about, whether it be stormwater management, whether it be traffic, whether it be a number of different things, we either have contemplated those in the proposed plan or know that as it moves through the process, those things will either be looked at or addressed, and they're not just completely up to us as the applicant.
Any other questions for the applicant?
This, for clarity, this is income-based?
So this would be similar to Admiral, Addington, Kirkwood, Hartley, Avondale, and Abbey. We have a application in with the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency for 9% credits, tax credits.
So basically all working families?
I'm sorry, what?
All working individuals?
Some folks call it workforce housing. It's low-income housing tax credit under the Section 42 tax credit at the IRS is technical, but yes.
Kind of a redefined affordable housing thing I'm trying to get to. Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Stone.
Thank you.
Is there anyone up? Yes, Mr. Shannon.
Just a clarification for council and for the members of the public. The applicant has noted their intent of how they wish to develop the project for age limit. I would note our development ordinance does not specify that. We just have multifamily. And we do not base zoning on age limits of residents because we can't enforce that. Also just note the concept plan that the applicant submitted to the residents during their citizens information meeting, and that report is within your staff reports in the back of the staff report. That is illustrative. There is no binding plan on this site because things may move around. So just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of those two key factors, that as far as for zoning purposes, we would just consider this a multifamily use.
Thank you, Mr. Shannon, for that clarification. Is there anyone here who would like to speak either for or against this item? Anyone here who would like to speak for or against this item? I think we already heard from you. No, that's fine. Once you have your chance to speak, would you like to speak? You can come forward and give us your name. And give us your name and address. We generally give people one opportunity to speak.
My name is Barbara Marino.
I'll be real quick on this property and the next one, so I don't have to say the same thing. I don't think the council has enough information to make an informed decision. It's bouncing from a small amount, a small society, to something that's huge. I mean, the number of units have grown. Even Sunset, it's 2.1 acres. They want to put, as I understand it, it keeps growing, 54 units. That's the backside of the hospital. You have,
This property is on Ski Club Road, ma'am.
yeah, okay. Well, that's all I'll say. I just don't think you all have enough information, and I think more of the public needs to know about it because this has not been before the public, except what's brought up today. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. I think there was a hand in the back. Yes, ma'am, if you'd like to come forward, give us your name and address for our record.
My name is Brenda Myers, and I live in one of the developments that right up next to where this property is.
Can we have your actual address for the record? for our clerk?
4201 Soma Court, SOMMA, 27265. Mayor, city council members, Wynwood representatives, and citizens of North High Point that live in this area. I'm here to let you know that I oppose the Wynwood development in any form. It is slightly better to know that it is for senior citizens, but you still are not addressing our concerns. One, it is a very small piece of property. I understand at first you wanted to put 84 apartment units. I believe now it's 74, but I haven't heard the final word. Either way, both are way too much for that small piece of land. If you had 74 units, then that means 74 plus cars will have to exit this property and turn right onto Skeet Club in order to go to Highway 68 or the Harris Teeter Shopping Center. They have to go down to the stoplight at the next development, which is my development, and make a U-turn and then go back. You can't turn left out of that development. You have to turn right. The road construction on Skeet Club, it has a concrete islands, which is why you can't turn left. You have to go down to a stoplight and make a U-turn. That's 74 plus cars making a U-turn in front of our development. Sorry, I just got off work and I got here late. Give me a minute. Two, the lighting in the parking lot of your development will have to be bright to meet safety concerns. That destroys the peace of my development. We like the pole lights we have throughout the neighborhood. Your lighting will disturb our peace. Three, the noise level will be higher. Four, crime. That many more people will raise the crime rate as more people will come to our area. Crime was almost non-existent when I built my house and moved in 28 years ago. The more people that came, the higher the crime rate went. We have had break-ins, assaults, people checking cars during the middle of the night to see if they can find one unlocked so they could steal from it. And all of this is called, a lot of us have security cameras, so we have this on film on security cameras. I find that my neighbors are very good people, but criminals look for a dense population as their odds of finding someone to rob are higher. What are you going to do to prevent more crime? I built my home 28 years ago when it appeared additional development would be along the same lines, and I am disturbed that you are forcing me to sell my home because your development is not what we envisioned when we moved here. I always thought that when we elected a representative to represent us in our feelings, they spoke for us. I am disappointed in all of you if you pass this. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone who hasn't spoken who would like to speak? Yes, sir.
My name's John Burdette. I live at Birchwood Gardens Cluster Homes. It's the adjacent property here to the left where you see Angie Court. It was presented to the people here, which you're not seeing a lot of representation from our area. My neighborhood is elderly people. It was presented to them as an elderly community that's coming in, which is, we know there's something's going to go on this property at some point. I don't think things are being taken into consideration. One thing we asked for was fencing. We asked them to give us a privacy fence. The way the property is going to set up, they're going to keep 6-inch trees on the part by Fountain Village. We have no 6-inch trees. You pull up to us, your headlights are right in our door. People are looking in our doors. So I would like to, if they're going to do it, put a fence up, give us some kind of privacy. Keep people from wandering from there into our yards, into our back, in our houses. We have enough traffic anyway, people coming off of Skeet Club, taking a shortcut through the field, coming through our private community. That's one aspect. Traffic, like the lady mentioned, coming out of this property here, the only way you can go, you turn right, you got to make this U-turn. So they're talking about elderly, handicapped people, 74 more cars coming around, having to make that U-turn and come back. One of the things I think the traffic department hasn't taken into consideration is there's another development that's gone on back behind us now. There's another 80-some houses they've added into there. So that's additional traffic that's coming out Birchwood. So Birchwood's getting pretty congested right now, not only because of that, but people living on Fountain are having to come back down and circle around, come to Birchwood, so they don't have to make that crazy U-turn. I mean, that U-turn is ridiculous. Fire trucks, everybody else trying to make that corner. It's a bad situation. I don't think they're taking the full impact of traffic that we're seeing, and they really need to look at a lot heavier. I mean, it is a dangerous situation. I don't know if the traffic department needs to put them an access or a light or something else, turn and come off of that area. But really, everybody in the meeting that I attended there, they presented it. Everybody in there asked about, fences make good neighbors. We've asked about fencing on the side of it to protect our homes, to keep people from wandering in. And that is really, I don't think that's a lot to ask for. I mean, Mr. Peters is getting a 4-foot fence. Give us a 6-foot fence, keep people from looking in our doors, I mean, you've got 84 more units coming in here that they're presenting, and give us some protection. I know people over at Fountain would like the same thing. They would have to have something, in there to keep people from wandering into their backyards. It's 2 steps away, and you're into their porch. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Oh, ma'am. Okay. With that, I'm going to close the public hearing, and I'm going to make a motion for approval of item 22-06. Is there a second? Second. There's a motion and a second for approval of the item. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I would like to make a point that Winfield's this development was highly opposed in 2019 by a lot of residents there. I got hammered with phone calls and emails and everything about it. Communicated everything with Mr. Stone about their concerns. I'll paraphrase it, but he said, when we build a product, we want to be welcomed into that community. So they went back to the drawing board, withdrew their application, went back to the drawing board, came back with a similar product, which was still not very well received. So when Councilmember Holmes and I had our town hall on April 11th, it was very highly attended. It's the most highly attended town hall I've ever had. There was quite a few of the main, if you look in the notes on the agenda, the people that signed at the neighborhood meeting, several of them were there at the meeting that Winfield had. And they were at the town hall. And I said, and that was on our agenda, so people knew we were going to discuss that. We went through several agenda items, but when we got to that item, I said, guys, I'm here to represent you, and if you guys do not want me to support this, then let me know now. But talking to the main players that kind of have a pulse on the community there, Mike and I asked them, and they said, no, with the change it being seniors, the 3-story to 2-story, all the units being on the inside of that tract, and all those changes, we're actually okay with it. And that was what they said, the news interviews and everything. So there's always going to be opposition to everything, and I hear those statements and emails, and I'm emailing back and forth with Ms. Jackie about this as well. Something's going to be developed there at some point, and I think this, out of all the things that have been proposed for that site, as the least change to the composition of that area. So based on the feedback I've gotten from emails, phone calls, and our town hall, I think a majority of the neighbors there do support this project going in there.
Let me also jump in that my motion also includes the adoption of the reasonableness and consistency statement made by the Planning and Zoning Board. I know that's a requirement.
And if I can make one comment real quick. So last week I went to the North Carolina League of Municipalities, and just so you know that cities across North Carolina and actually across the nation, whether they're 1,500 population or 500,000, have a lot of the same issues and concerns. And one thing that we listened to from mayors and council members from all over North Carolina is that one of the best things that we can do as council members is listen to our planning departments, because they know how to create mixed-use spaces so that we make the best bang for our bucks in the city and can keep your taxes low. So just know that, we encourage our planners to think outside the box and do what's best for our city. That's all.
Mr. Holmes?
Councilman Jones is exactly right. We did at our town hall, we did have this discussion. But I think there's also some very glaring questions that we have to answer. And there's some very compelling arguments about the flow of this traffic, and I don't know if this was this covered, was this addressed? How deeply did these concerns get discussed with the citizens of the area? I mean, we're talking about the numbers of people that have to only one way to turn, U-turn to get through. I can't see how that doesn't cause some type of issues. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't see how it doesn't. And so even though there's some support, we've talked about it, I do think this needs to be looked at. I think this needs to be looked at deeper and more thoroughly, because we're talking about adding additional people, additional cars, additional traffic, and I don't know if we've done anything with the current structure of the road to accommodate that. And that's just, I'm looking at these concerns, I'm looking at it myself, and I don't see what we've done to mitigate those things. And I think we need to have this discussion. I don't know what the traffic department, I don't know what they missed, or if there was anything missed. I don't want to assume that there was, but these are very compelling arguments that these citizens have made. And, I think they deserve at least some type of consideration on what they're going to do. I understand that this land is going to be developed, but it shouldn't be developed at the detriment of the people who currently live there in terms of their quality of life and the way they travel.
I see Mr. Venable already approaching. I know that the widening of Ski Club Road was a state DOT project, and they designed the road, my understanding. But if you could possibly speak,
Sure.
not only to that, but also to the the safety issue regarding having to go right and make a U-turn.
Right, so obviously the roadway was just completed, the project was just completed not long ago, and I'm sorry. So the project was just completed. It was widened from a 2-lane facility, no curb and gutter, to a 4-lane median divided. So when you have a median divided facility like that, you don't want to have full movement access points all along the corridor, because it's unsafe. It's unsafe to have those kind of movements without signals and things like that than it is to grant that, to have that median there. So what the project does is it does push people, make people make a right turn coming out of their developments at some locations. And you want to have those full movement. When I say full movement, you can have full access on all sides of the intersection. You want to have those spaced out appropriately so that, there's not issues in the future as well. So DOT did, this project's been going on for a long time. They did a lot of study on that. They located those full movement access points at appropriate locations. I know there was some concern about this intersection that's there at Birch Garden with those U-turns there. I think the NCDOT put up, there was a question about fire trucks and things like that. They installed no truck U-turns at certain locations to push those larger vehicles to the larger intersections. So, when the applicant came in, they did not reach the number of trips we talked about before for a TIA. And there are options for, those neighborhoods, with this site excluded, all those adjacent neighborhoods do have other means of access going back through the neighborhoods to come out at different intersections. So we looked at that as well.
Mr. Venable, when the DOT did this project, I know they take into account surrounding residential areas. Was this proposal available for them to consider when this began? Did they, during the time of the development, this proposal come up? Was there any recalculation based on any new housing or prospective housing down the road?
No, so when this development came through, the design was already complete. But the number of units, it is a low number. It's a multifamily development which has less trips than a single family development would. So the impacts, they've already widened the road, so really there's not a whole lot that they can do above and beyond what they've already.
So you don't think if this was proposed prior to the design being complete, it would have changed their calculation any?
Not as far as, people making that right turn out of the development. I think there's a condition, Herb, for a right turn lane as well. So they are going to be required to put in a right turn lane into the development to get people off the roadway. But yeah, for people coming out, making the right out, there's not a whole lot you can do for that. And like I said, that's a safer movement to go down at a signal to make that U-turn than trying to cross, 4 lanes of traffic, making a left turn out of a development. So.
Sure. Mr. Venable, if this were a bigger development in that same location, we would still have a right in and right out because of the design of Ski Club right there.
Correct.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, somebody's phone's going off, so that's probably why. My point being, whether this is 70 units or 700 units, the access point, because of the design of Ski Club, would be right in, right out, no matter what. So to Michael Holmes's point, is there anything more that we could do to mitigate any traffic impacts? And there is not. And so I think we definitely have to listen to those concerns, but it's not like we're putting in a shopping center. As you said, the multifamily is going to have less trips than single-family residents. I hear those concerns, but I have to weigh these factors in, and I think this final plan is the most acceptable plan that Winfield Properties has put before this council, and the Ski Club's finally done. It wasn't done in 2019 when all the people were saying Ski Club's already a nightmare. Well, it's not a nightmare anymore. I think we're at the point now that we can accept the little bit of traffic it's going to create, which is not going to be much on 70 units.
Question. Under current zoning, Mr. Shannon, under current zoning, is there anything that would go there? And I know this is not something that the citizens want to hear, but we have to look at this. Is there anything that would go there that would be worse than this?
I would just state that
More traffic.
the current zoning allows multifamily up to 16 units per acre now. You can do office use. You can do minor retail, not more than 4,000 square feet. You can do social service facilities.
It could be office up to 80 feet, was that the?
Office, the current zoning has a single-story limitations, but you could have an office use with high ceilings that could be 30, 40 feet high.
Okay. I thought you said something about 80.
Something about 80.
Yeah. I'd noted that the abutting lands to the east that are zoned office institutional, the OI district allows up to 80 feet with additional setback.
And I'm sorry, I wanted to make sure that we put in perspective what this is versus what could come. And I know this is a tough situation. I know this is really hard, and I know but this land could be developed for something that you may like less than this. And I really hope that you all take that into consideration. And I know that's cold comfort, but that's just the reality.
I think, Mayor, we're dealing with growing pains, a good, bad problem, but all the way down, I live down off Ski Club. I have most of my life. But the design of that road, and if you do much travel into our neighboring cities and anywhere that's got a pulse and a life, which is a good thing, they're designing these roads for those type of turns. And the property, you know, I used to hunt and fish a lot of that area as a kid, ride bikes around it and whatnot. But the property just on the other side of Deep River Rec Center has been there for a long time. It's for sale too. And when it comes up and gets developed, they're going to have the same ingress, egress assignments that the rest of them do. And it's followed that pattern all the way down Skeet Club Road. So I think that, you know, I hope that Mr. Stone will try to address the concern as much as he can going through the process of the respect of the people's privacy and the lighting and the noise ordinances and all that. And I feel like you've done that in other properties that you have developed. So I hope you'll continue to take that in consideration and continue to be someone that is open and communicating with the folks if they reach out to you.
Mr. Mayor, I think we had a hand over in the corner.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I know I'm a school teacher, so I have to be loud enough.
Well, can she come up?
No.
Ma'am, can you tell us what you want to say?
Oh, yeah.
Because I've closed the public hearing.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up and just mention with the traffic, and I put so many things in this, but there is one problem that I'm looking at. I've been told, well, Steve Covey County, I feel like Steve Covey County, the proximity of where these people will have to get over into the left-hand turn lane to be able to make that left turn. There are going to be these people flying down Ski Club, which I don't know how they can go that fast, that quickly from the Ski area. But I don't even know if lowering the speed limit is even a possibility or any. But they're not going to have much room to pull out, cross over the two lanes and get into the left turn lane. So, I mean, whatever's in there is going to have to face that. So, I'm agreeing with that, but it is the same.
I'd like to tag on to what
Any
council-
other discussion among
I'd like to
council?
tag on to what Brett said. The properties that you've developed so far have been top rate. I appreciate the work that you and Winfield have done, and that's it gives me confidence in this property as well. And I hope that you will take the concerns to heart, and knowing your other properties, I'm sure that you will.
Any other comments from the council? Okay, hearing none, there's a motion and a second for approval of this item. All those in favor of approval of zoning map amendment 22-06, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is zoning map amendment 22-07. This is Winfield Forward LLC, and the site is located around Carrick Street, between Sunset Avenue and West Ray Avenue.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Public hearing is open.
Herb Shannon with the Planning Department once again. This is a request to rezone this 2.1 acre site from its current residential single-family 5 and office institutional district to a conditional zoning residential multifamily 26. As you previously noted, the site's located east of Carrick Street between Sunset Drive and West Ray Avenue. And this site is part of a block that abuts the Lindsay Street office corridor. The applicant is requesting rezoning to support development of a multifamily development Included with this application is a conditional zoning ordinance in which the applicant has offered conditions pertaining to building height, lot combination, and sidewalk and pedestrian access. This request did not trigger a requirement for a traffic impact analysis, and we do have information included in the staff report as to impacts from Guilford County schools. This site is located within the core city area. It's at the northwestern edge of the hospital area, noted as the medical district in the core city plan. It's also abutting a residential area that's also classified as a residential area in the core city plan to the west of Lindsay Street. The plan speaks to enhancing qualities of residential neighborhoods, but it also encourages a wide range of housing types at high to moderate densities, and higher density housing should be located closer to mixed-use centers in the downtown areas and key corridors. I would also note that the site has a land use plan designation of office. This is a copy of the land use plan for this area. The area that's highlighted in blue is designated as office. That permits a wide range of office, institutional, and residential uses. The area that's highlighted in yellow is the residential neighborhood that the core city plan notes, and the land use plan notes as a low-density residential area. As you can see, the block in which this site is located is entirely designated as office by the land use plan. To mitigate impacts, the developer has offered conditions to limit building height, where they've offered a condition to restrict building heights to 50 feet to match the budding single family, as long as those single family homes remain on this parcel. As you can see, the eastern half of this block fronts along Lindsay, is developed with office use. You have the zoning site, and then there are 3 remaining parcels that the applicant was unable to acquire as part of this zoning application. Because of those remaining parcels and our negotiating conditions with the applicant, they've offered a condition that as long as those homes remain, that the building heights be restricted to 50 feet. That's the maximum height of that single-family district. If those homes are no longer used for single-family, then they can go to the maximum height allowed by the office institutional district. Key items to note from the findings in our analysis: as far as compatibility with the surrounding area, the requested multifamily zoning will act as a transition between the office business uses along the Lindsay Street corridor and the residential neighborhoods lying west of Carrick Street. As conditions, allowable building heights will be similar to what is permitted on those adjacent single-family parcels. In regards to mitigating impacts, standards of the development ordinance pertaining to landscaping, screening of trash receptacles, exterior lighting, and landscaping around the parking lot will assist to mitigate impacts on adjacent properties, and the fact that you have a public streets that help separate this site from the abutting neighborhood will also provide additional separation between this site and those neighborhoods to the north and to the west. Finally, there were questions and concerns raised at the Planning and Zoning Commission regarding stormwater runoff. This site is within the Yakin PD non-water supply area. If development, grading, or site improvements exceed 1 acre in the area, then stormwater regulations would require the applicant to provide stormwater runoff controls, where they would have to mitigate their impervious coverage. I would note, and this issue came up at the Planning and Zoning Commission, they only have to mitigate their stormwater runoff. They will not be required to address stormwater runoff that are generated from adjacent sites. And all of that land from Main Street was developed prior to our current standards. Main Street is a ridgeline, so everything does flow westward. So you do have that stormwater issue from development that took place prior to our current standards, but the applicant would have to address their impacts. Finally, as far as support of change in the area, the land use plan does support the office type development and higher intensity residential in this area, as do policies from the core city plan, which supports higher intensity residential housing close to the downtown area and key corridor streets. Thus, staff is recommending approval of the request for the conditional zoning for residential multifamily 26 zoning on the site. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed this application at their April 26th public hearing and recommended approval by a vote of 9-0. The Commission is forwarding you a consistency statement that the request is consistent with adopted policy guidance because the proposed RM26 district is supported by the land use policies of the Community Vision Growth Statement, the Land Use Plan, and the Core City Plan. The commission also stated the request is reasonable because the zoning request includes most of the western half of this block and is situated within the portion of the core city where adopted policy guidance support office or higher density residential uses to provide a wide range of housing opportunities. That's a brief summary of this request from staff. Are there any questions?
Any questions for staff? Thank you, Mr. Shannon. Oh,
Mr. Shannon, the stormwater runoff, my understanding, there was issues with flooding in this area?
The neighbors had expressed concerns with flooding in this area.
Any plans in the development to address that? Is that something that with the impervious expansion of impervious surface, is that going to exacerbate this problem, or?
As far as future plans, I don't know if there's anyone from Public Service. I know that's something the Public Service Department's been looking at in this area. The applicant, if they obtain approval when they go through the site plan review process through our technical review committee, they will have to address their impervious coverage. So any new impervious coverage on the site, if they have grading or development more than an acre in area, they would have to address their new impervious coverage from their development.
And our regulations require anything to be captured on site.
Right.
So they would be required to meet that standard if it's required.
Yeah, it actually is an improvement over what exists now because we don't have a catch basin, so it would be an improvement over that problem.
Thank you, Ms. Shannon. Mr. Stone, welcome back.
Thank you again. Thank you for council
Learned how to
for.
work the podium. You've been here enough. You know how to work the podium now.
Thank you for allowing me to speak concerning Market Square. As proposed, this is a 52-unit elderly community, 26 one-bedrooms, 26 two-bedrooms. This would amount to roughly right now about $11 million investment in this particular site in this area. Similar in design, architecture, materials, textures as to some of the other developments that we've done throughout the community. There was a number of concerns related to stormwater that exist currently and also traffic that were brought up. And one thing that I would say, some council members may remember Kirkwood crossing that we developed. This was a concern for that particular parcel. That particular parcel, as it was before we developed that site, was creating similar off-site and other uses. All sites are not able to do the same things. But our development, I think, since that time has mitigated some of the concerns that were coming from our site. So this particular site has some topography movement on it. Some of the folks that spoke around adjacent to this particular site had concerns. My understanding is from Public Works that there is planned activity down from this site, located downgraded from this site. Our particular design, as folks know, as you move through this process and disturb more than 1 acre, we will be required to go through a process that deals with the water as it is on this particular site, whether that be through retention systems, cistern, things of that nature. In most cases, because this currently is not dealing with that water in any manner, it does become an improvement, and it is something that helps the area. I think that there are other things that are being addressed in this area, certainly off-site, and we can't address items off-site, but as it relates to this particular parcel adjacent to the doctor's office and the single-family uses that currently has no storm retention features design in it, it's just standard elevation and topography as it exists today. We would be required to go in, deal with what we're, creating as far as additional stormwater issues and mitigate that, and would be required to deal with that on site. That's not up to us. We submit through our architecture and engineering design plans and specifications that go through a process that all of the departments look at, and then departments above them and get certification. So I feel confident that through this process, those are items that will be looked at and addressed, and it won't be up to just us as we submit through our engineers, through our architects, how that's dealt with. It'll be required through a pretty rigorous process that ties into, state requirements and other things like that. As it relates to traffic, this is a 52-unit elderly community. I do not believe this particular site, as it's currently contemplated, would generate a TIA. It could, as it moves through the process. That's another thing that the Transportation Department and staff could ask to be done, and any other features that it might require, whether that be speed bumps inside, those kind of things. But those are things that there is a very thorough process that staff goes through that we're required to meet, and we'll propose something, but then again, it's not up to us. So I don't know if that answers some of the questions, and I think there are some folks here tonight. If there's other questions, we can answer, but wanted to present myself that there was. This, again, is similar in fashion, financing-wise and target population as our last proposal, and so I'd like to answer any questions if there are any.
If I remember from the past, this Councilman Moore, that your waiting list you've referred to through the years, and I'm sure we're not catching up on it. All you got to do is pick up the paper. You obviously, we have constitutional rights, whatnot. You can't limit the applications that come into you geographically or any other way, can you?
No, I mean, we at Addington and Admiral, we opened the doors and within 3 months had over 3,000 applicants. Now, we stop at a point so that we're not taking application fees and things like that. And we have, fair housing standards, those kind of things that we have to maintain those lists and do. But the need is overwhelming.
I get it, but I guess my point being is that if the housing, the feds would give the local people a little more leeway, we could try to attack a little bit of the problem that we have in our area within a certain parameter, but I guess constitutionally that doesn't pass muster, so.
One thing I would add, the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency has a process. We are involved in that process via the QAP that they put out. It is likely with cost increases because of COVID that their normal application output would be 40 to 45 awards. This year, I doubt that that's 20 to 25 because of doubling of cost. The need is overwhelming.
Sure.
Mike McNair and his department, I think, more than 5,000. I think it's actually quite a bit more than that as far as need goes, and we're talking about 52 apartments here. So there's not enough tools for affordable housing.
But like I said, I just think if the whole thing was reshaped a little bit, maybe local communities could address their local community issues and everywhere across the country. I mean, but that is what it is.
I do agree. If we had more tools we could use.
Any other questions for Mr. Stone? Thank you, Mr. Stone.
Thank you.
Hang around, we may have more questions for you.
And we do have some bond applications coming.
Okay, several people signed up to speak, and I will take them in the order that they were listed on the sheet. And then, but if you didn't get a chance to sign up, I'll open the floor in case anyone else would like to speak on this item as well. First one is Greg Adzema. Welcome back to City Hall, Greg. Greg used to work for us at one point.
How you doing, folks? Thank you, City Council and Mayor, for your time today. My name is Greg Adzema, and I live at 800 West Ray Avenue. And I've been a 34-year resident on West Ray Avenue, and many of you know me for 12 years on the Board of Adjustment and various other city items. I'd like to start with the info session that the developer put forth for this property was somehow announced, but it was before the sign went up announcing the property, and it was before the sign went up for planning and zoning, and it was before the sign went up for city council. So I'm not sure how anybody would have gotten their information early. This property is not congruous with the neighborhood. The next 4 blocks has properties up to 5 acres in size, and we are talking 78 bedrooms, probably 100 people and 100 cars on 2 acres. I'm sure some of you folks live on 2 acres or have 2 acres near you. How would you like 100 cars and 100 people on that? We don't want that. Obviously, it's not currently zoned for this development. We've mentioned traffic issues in some previous discussions. Obviously, that many cars and people are going to increase the traffic on West Ray Avenue, which has gone up quite dramatically in the last 30 years, as have the speeds. The developer said they would mitigate any flooding, but I will say that this area floods very often, especially at the corner of Rotary and West Ray Avenue. I have personally waded up past my knees to help emergency vehicles, ambulances, and policemen get out of there because they've been stuck. How would you like to be in an ambulance stuck in there? Maybe you're dying on the way to the hospital. Not a good thing, because this is a major cut through to the hospital. This is a direct route to the emergency room, and the city's slogan, creating single, most livable, safe, prosperous community in America, none of that applies to this. This is an overburdened piece of property at 2 acres, and it makes absolutely no sense for this area to be developed in this manner. I mean, we're talking multiple. The previous development we're talking about has maybe 13, 14 units per acre. This one's 26 units per acre. Just think of what 1 acre is with 26 apartments, probably 40 people, and 40 cars on it. You might as well live in New York City. There's a lot of us folks that came to High Point because it was not New York City, and we like it the way it is. Thanks.
Thank you, Greg. Rachel Anderson?
Hello, my name is Rachel Anderson, and I live on 706 Delmont Street. It is my first house. I love it. It's a work in progress, but that's a fun bit. If it's all right, could I pass you guys? I put out a petition, and as you can see, there's a copy for each of you. And they have their addresses there, and every single person who signed is going to be affected by this project. Like they're within 3 blocks away. Firstly, I would like to, yeah, there, I already did that, sorry. Please note that all the addresses are ones that will be directly influenced by the proposed development. The total number is 50. I actually have more, but that was before I was getting them to put down addresses, and I wasn't able to get back in touch with everybody. I've had a great deal of pleasure meeting a good deal of my neighbors while putting this together, all individuals and families who invested in this city when we decided to make High Point our home. Each name and address is a person who thought it was worth their time to voice their concerns and opinions about this proposed project. One of the most talked about was water drainage, or in many cases, the lack thereof. Our neighborhood streets and homes have been subjected to increasing levels of water and flooding, much of which head straight towards us from downtown and the hospital. The area that is the construction is proposed upon is one of the last substantial green places that separates us from that just wash of concrete. And it absorbs a substantial amount of water. There's also a gully in the center that would have to be filled in, which would further decrease the land's ability to actually stop that flow. It would be ridiculous and short-sighted to approve any new construction until the drainage issue in our neighborhood has been properly addressed. It will result in property damage. It's already happening now, and it's worse. And again, this property will deal with the water that falls on it, not the stuff that it's absorbing now. So all that's still going to go down towards us and affect us. It also has the potential for bodily harm when ambulances either have to reroute to avoid flooded streets or simply get stuck in them. To ask us to accept these risks to ourselves, our loved ones, and our property is unreasonable at best. Furthermore, to do so in the face of the concerns of so many names in front of you borders on unconscionable. Another concern of many is the parking. 52 parking spaces for 52 units, half of which will be 2-bedroom, is not possibly going to contain the amount of vehicles or staff for this development, and doesn't even take into consideration any visitors that they would have. Some single units will have 2 occupants and the possibility of 2 vehicles, 2 bedrooms even more. Parking is already slim in this area on regular days, not even considering the added traffic and parking concerns during market, which of course we are right up against. For myself personally, I would have no problem with this project if the infrastructure in place could handle it and if the plans made sense. Unfortunately, they don't, and until they do, I cannot. In closing, no construction should be thoughtfully endorsed without a good groundwork in place to support it. This project has neither the actual pipes or the community support to make it a solid or considerable choice at the moment. Again, I would like you to take a look at the names and addresses in front of you and ask if our concern for our homes and the quality of our lives that we live in them is worthy of your consideration. Also, like the previous development that was talked about, this one is right up against, the street. And again, 3 stories high, and one suggestion we have that's mentioned on there is possibly downgrading it to 16R instead of 26, and just lowering it so that it's a little bit more reasonable for our neighborhood, because that's going to be right up against our street and everywhere. And thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Cameron Ledbetter?
Hello, my name is Cameron Ledbetter. I also reside at 706 Delmont Street. Also, I'd like to thank Tyrone Johnson and Michael Holmes for being the only members of this committee to answer my email on this subject. One of the concerns I've seen that hasn't been brought up yet is that in the plans listed that have been shown by Winfield Properties, they have the building. Thank you. The setback for the building in the plans as presented shows a 10-foot setback from the street for a 50-foot tall structure. Ordinance number 7266-1708 that was passed, I believe, in, was it January 17th, 2017, states that for RH26 zoning, they would need to have a setback of 20 feet. And if you're looking at the plans as presented, you literally can't move a building that size 20 feet without being on top of someone's house. So it's already not up to code for the zoning that's being requested, which is not a good sign generally, I'd say. Once again, 78 tenants at least, 52 parking spaces. I'm just not seeing it. Also, one of the things that has been brought up is that, well, they've brought up a good bit about there being screened-in dumpsters. It's also within those plans, it is 1 recycling dumpster and 1 regular waste dumpster for 78 plus people. That's not enough capacity. So basically, in order to still maintain that, that would mean that waste management routes would have to be increased into there, which obviously is going to have its own problems as well. As far as traffic, yeah, it's really annoying when traffic backs up. And yes, that will be a big issue considering that the main entrance on Sunset is just up from the traffic circle during market that already backs up past Ray. And just across Lindsay, right at that intersection is already where those paramedics actually stage their trucks for dispatch. So backing that up further could cause some serious problems there. Hold on a minute, sorry. Let's see, oh yeah. The traffic. If you've actually gone down Sunset, just past Carrick and Delmont, you probably notice that there's extremely little sight distance right there. And so if you have cars coming in and out from that entrance, it's a pretty tight street. There's not really anywhere to swerve as it is. You're going to end up having wrecks at that entrance, basically, like both coming in off of Lindsay and going towards Lindsay. Just, it doesn't make sense to have cars going in and out of there that much, given the sight distance. I swear, I'm trying to keep it down to things that have been overly discussed already. I know your time is valuable. Also say for a 3-story senior building, it seems kind of crazy to only have 6 handicap parking spaces and no elevator in the plans. I'm not really sure how that's supposed to work. And once again, with it not having proper offset from the street, the reason why those are in place, as I'm sure you know, has to do with fire ladders, being able to have enough distance from buildings to be able to get up to higher floors. So there's issues there as well. Let's see. Oh yeah, power grid strain. So a lot of the presentations I've been seeing seem to really rely heavily on the idea that the infrastructure in place already is doing great. And in reality, it's not. Once again, if you'd visited the site, you'd know, let's just go infrastructure in general. Those roads are already crumbling. If you bring in that much heavy construction equipment that's required to build a 3-story building, they will crumble further in pretty short order. One thing that people don't seem to really notice that much, I guess, is that we actually experienced a ton of power outages in the area. 78 seniors in a building, many of whom would end up, especially because also prioritizing people with disabilities, rely on medical devices. So that site is actually on a separate grid from the hospital, which is set up to handle those kinds of devices in case of power outages. But we see a lot of power outages in the area already. It seems like it'd be a strain on the power system. Let's see. So mostly I'm just suggesting that the rezoning instead be for RH16. It seems like this type of project could be done pretty easily within that zoning if it met the requirements for it. Even in the article in High Point Enterprise, Winfield even alludes to the fact that it's a very tight fit because it doesn't fit. And also I keep hearing about like, oh, well, there's commercial here that could be 80 feet tall. It isn't. Those commercial properties, those offices are converted 1-story cottages. We're not talking about having a smooth transition between a big booming commercial sector with tall buildings down to single family. This would be the towering structure in the area. It just seems like whenever it's convenient that things are well planned out and will go great, and whenever anything's brought up, it's, oh, well, it's up in the air. The city will figure it out. And I just don't have the confidence with this. Additionally, it's also where I keep hearing about how great their current sites are managed. Quick Google search. The reviews say completely otherwise. They tend to all have the same kind of issues, primarily with waste management. So, probably about maybe at least a quarter or more of the complaints on there are that there's trash piled up everywhere. Even more if you include pest control issues that come from that. I just do not have faith in this project, period. And I think it's just reckless to go forward with it as it is currently planned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ledbetter. Is there anyone else present who would like to speak in regard to this item? You've already had your chance.
The only thing I want to say is, we didn't even know about this really.
If you're going to speak, you have to come forward to the podium and give us your name and address, please. Thank you.
I didn't really plan on coming up here, but my name is Terry Curry. I sent y'all an email, 401 Colonial Drive. We didn't even know about this. I think Mr. Ledbetter didn't even get the letter about the meeting until the day after. And that was only 300 feet that they sent out letters to. I heard about it a week ago, and I came to the planning meeting. So there would have been a lot more people here had they known about it to voice their to voice their concerns. And I'm worried about the traffic being so close to Lindsay, where the entrance and exit, the only one going in and off the street. So, I mean, if you could expand the time so more people could voice their concerns, it would really help. Thank you.
Can I ask her a question?
Yes.
When did you get notification?
I never got notification. I'm on the corner of Delmont and Colonial.
Those outside the radius would be contacted.
Just outside.
But it affects me dramatically.
Oh, I'm sure. Thank you. Before she steps down, Mr. Shannon, would you state what the requirement is for notification in the neighborhood?
We notify all property owners within 300 feet.
That's what's, and to your knowledge, has the applicant complied with that? I mean, that's the city gives notification.
Yes.
That's right.
We provide that list to the applicant when their citizens information.
Okay, thank you.
And when did you get your notification?
So for the planning and zoning meeting, just here with the time requirements, for Winfield's presentation after the,
And two of our neighbors who moved in this year who are on the same street, the street right after that, and we within 300 feet, we did anything. We're the only reason they knew about it.
There's a list, folks, in your packet of everyone who received notification. It's in your stuff. Anyone else who'd like to speak?
I got one quick question for Mr. Shannon.
Yes, go ahead.
Who determines, is it city ordinance or who determines the 300 feet?
City staff.
That's a,
Well, the state statutes require notification of property owners within 100 feet. The city development ordinance, we have a higher standard, so we've upped that to all property owners within 300 feet.
thank you. I wanted that kind of rhetorically for the record and for that to be known by the neighbors here.
Okay.
My neighbors who didn't get it are like on the same street as me. They're within 100 feet. They're within the first one and the second one.
Okay, with that, I'm going to close the public hearing. I think a lot of what has been brought up, I think everybody needs to understand really the process of what we're doing. What we're being asked to do is to determine whether the new zoning is correct, okay? We're asked to rezone the property. We're not here to approve their site plan. We're not here to approve what they're planning to do with it. You know, I don't know if Mr. Stone, I don't know if his company actually owns the property yet. Do you actually own this property? You have option contracts. So this property could be sold to someone else. It could be redeveloped in another way. So all we're asked to do is approve the request for rezoning. As far as where the property is built, where the building is built on the property, whether they have to put in stormwater controls, whether they have to put in a turn lane, you know, or what they might have to do to address any kind of transportation issue, those are things that are handled after the fact through our technical review process with the city, okay? Because the developer, when they come back, they have to produce their site plan, they have to produce their plans to the city for approval, and all of those things go through our technical review committee, and they review those, and they determine whether the, what's been proposed meets the requirements of our ordinances, okay? So a lot of the things that were brought up are things that really we can take into account, but are really things that if the zoning is approved, would be handled once an actual plan is produced and filed with the city. With regard to the stormwater, that's one thing that's been brought up over and over. As Mr. Shannon stated, they're required, if they're going to disturb more than 1 acre of land, that they have to put in stormwater controls. That will control every drop of rain that hits that development has to be controlled. It is related to, you know, impervious surface, and they will have to catch and retain that water on that site. Now, our experience typically has been that whenever we have new developments that go into an older area that's experiencing or has experienced some sort of stormwater problem, usually the new development makes it better. Because what you have right now is roughly 2 acres where there are no stormwater controls. And you'll, if in the future, if this is developed, you'll have 2 acres where there are stormwater controls. I have one question though for our staff, and I don't know if Robbie Stone is still here or somebody. One of our stormwater projects was that lower area of Ray Street, I believe. Has that project been completed, or is that still in the works? Mr. Almeida? Yeah. Okay. Any time frame on that? Not your knowledge, okay. Anyway, I want to get that out there before we continue, so that folks will have a better understanding of really what our role is at this current phase. It's really just a question of zoning. So with that, and to keep things moving, I'm going to make a motion for approval of this item, and I'm going to state that in my motion for approval that I will adopt the reasonableness and consistency statement as stated by the staff in the staff report. Second. And there's a second for that motion. So now the floor is open to council for discussion or any questions you might have. Public hearing is closed. Anyone have any questions? Staff?
Not for staff.
Comments, I mean?
Well, no, I mean, I guess it's for Mr. Stone. I see that here was a suggestion of alternate zoning to RH-16. Was that discussed in your meeting with the residents about maybe lowering the density requirement to meet some of these concerns that they had? Is it something that is feasible?
Alternate zoning was not discussed. And one thing I would add, in addition to the notifications, we placed a rather large sign on the site as notification to the community of the proposed development as well, so that it would be front and center and publicly seen. But there was no discussion of alternate zoning.
I'm sorry, Mr. Stone. I'm just kind of looking in the packet. And it said in the notes that it was proposed, and so I'm just trying to make sure that.
Does that ring a bell with you, Mr. Shannon?
Does that call you to your recollection that was discussed?
Well, the citizens.
By the citizens?
The citizens' information meeting, that's not something the staff attends. That's not a city function. The purpose of that is allow the applicant and the neighbors to discuss the property and proposal up front, so that the public hearing is not the first time they're hearing about it. Now, that issue was raised by one of the residents at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, but staff was not at the citizens' information meeting, so I just have to go by what was in their report. But a property owner did make that recommendations for the P&Z to consider, but the P&Z, their recommendation was to bring it forward with the conditional zoning RM26 district.
I have a question. So if the rezoning passes and then the plan, the site plan is turned in and they have to obey like all the different ordinances and stuff, I'm sure at that point the citizens will get invitations to come and see the site plan. And if, no, okay, all right, I don't know. So, but if it doesn't meet the ordinances, would the applicant have to reduce the number of dwellings?
Well, the first part of your question, if it's approved, it's considered a permitted use. The review through a technical review process, that's not a public hearing where the citizens come and have input. As far as when it goes through the technical review process, the staff will not approve it unless they meet all ordinance requirements. So if there's some issue, parking, density, setback, if they're not meeting that requirement, then we will deny the plans.
So none of the current design or requests from the applicant were rejected by P&Z 100% in line with what the zoning request is?
The key issue to look at in the staff report is the conditional zoning ordinance. That is what the P&Z and the city council is asked to approve. Those are going to be the higher zoning standards. There was no, the site plan that is in the citizens information packet, that is illustrative. It has not gone through the complete formal review process. And as I previously noted, this is not a binding site plan, so things may move around.
Anyone else? Any questions for staff, the applicant, any comments? I'll make a couple more comments. I think, as I'll allude to something Mr. Moore said on our previous case, as growing pains, I think that's something that we are experiencing as a city, and a lot of other cities, and I'll again allude to what the Mayor Pro Tem said as well. As the areas where we live continue to urbanize, these are the types of projects that we're going to see. There are going to be a lot more infill projects and that are calling for a lot more density. Density is not necessarily a bad thing. If we can provide services to a greater, first of all, we have a huge need for housing of all types, not just in High Point, but really in our state and our region, probably all over the country. There's huge need for housing. The greater density allows the city to provide services to a greater number of people at a lower cost, which long-term means lower taxes for all of you. It also, putting more units on a smaller area of land also produces a greater value per acre for that property, which allows the city to collect more property taxes and, again, puts less stress on your tax rate. And it provides needed housing for people who need to have it. But it is growing pains, because the closer you live to the middle, to the core of the city, the more pressure you're going to see in the future for multifamily developments adjacent to single family. I can tell you from my own experience, I have a multifamily development 1 block east of my house. It's been there for 80 years, I think. I think it was built in the 40s. I have another multifamily development 2 blocks to the northeast of my house that's probably been there, I don't know, since at least the 50s, I would think. It's not something I even think about on a daily basis. It's there, and they're both there, and they've always been there. And I haven't seen any sort of detriment to my property values or my traffic or anything. And they're both much bigger than this, much bigger than this. And as the city continues to grow, these are the type of developments that we're going to have to be dealing with, I think, as we transition to a more urban style of living. So that's kind of my 2 cents. I will be supporting this. I know it's a tricky little piece of property, but generally multifamily is the proper place for multifamily is as a transitional use, and this is a piece of property that's between office and single family, and to me, I think it fits that as a transitional use. So, anybody else have any comments before I call the vote?
I want to just say one thing. I believe it's Mr. Ledbetter. Is that correct? You spoke very well, and you look to be about half my age. And you made some good points about the infrastructure and the density. And we, as this council and any council that's going to come after us, is going to be faced with the perpetual burden of upgrading and making better the infrastructure that's under us, because our city, I think we're probably a little ahead of Greensboro and Winston in a lot of ways, but our infrastructure in certain parts of the city is aging. There's no question. So you make that a good point, and that's certainly a priority for this council and this staff as we budget. We're facing the same thing. The area in which you live was platted and developed long before the standards that are in place now to help, and some of the area in that, by today's standard, probably wouldn't have been developed in the way that it developed now because of the issues of the concerns of the water and that kind of thing. We're dealing with the same thing you may have read in the paper at Foxwood Meadows, across from the Ocala Dam there at Eastchester. So those things changed in the 70s, and new standards have been put in place, but unfortunately, this council and any other council has to deal sometimes with things that were put in place that we didn't have nothing to do with. So we're kind of trying to balance that ball between quantity and quality, and hopefully we get it right more times than we get it wrong. But I think our staff will do a good job in following this through the TRC and through the planning and development. As far as your one comment, I'll make this and be quiet. Again, I mentioned that you're about half my age. I do use Google sometimes too, but I trust them about as far as I can throw them. Most people that make comments in that type of arena are ones that have a complaint. You don't often get praise for something done right. So, but I can promise you that Mr. Stone will work diligently with staff, and he will be available to probably answer your calls if you call the office and get back to you as it goes through. I will be supporting this, and I'm trusting that it'll be good for long-term, long after I'm gone. But thank you for being here and sharing your heartfelt, well-researched thoughts, all of you.
Anyone else like to speak? Okay. There is a motion and a second for approval of this item. If there's no further discussion, then all those in favor of approval, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. All right. So next, we are going to move on to our general business agenda. The first is to establish a public hearing of May 16th, 2022 at 5:30 for the, that's the public hearing for the budget for 2022-23. I'll turn it over to our staff for further explanation of what we're doing.
Yes, sir. Just give me 1 second.
Oh, and also included in that is the budget work session days as well.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Stephen Haverlook, Budget and Performance Manager, the Budget Evaluation Division, which is a division of financial services. Prior to the action on establishing the public hearing, I do want to go through some slides discussing an overview of the FY 22-23 proposed budget. For those that are at the special meeting earlier today, very similar slides, but a little more condensed version. And so just the overview, we're going to talk about the budget context, kind of the challenges that were faced in developing this budget and throughout the fiscal year, the total budget, including revenues and expenditures, the capital improvement plan, and then our next steps. And so first talking about the budget, the context, the challenges we faced this year, and the challenges that affected kind of developing this budget for next year. COVID-19 variants, the Delta variant and the Omicron variant kind of remind us that we're not quite out of this pandemic. There's a new normal that we're having to deal with, and how does that new normal affect our daily delivery of services? Supply chain issues that we're seeing with timing of equipment orders, vehicle orders, inflation. We're seeing costs much higher than we originally anticipated, trying to factor those into department budgets so they continue to deliver services that they're used to delivering. Fuel prices. We've seen the impact on fuel prices. You've all seen it. Your constituents have all seen it. We'll show a slide kind of showing the pretty large increase we're seeing in what we're paying for fuel right now for all our city departments. Retention and recruitment. The city is not immune from the effects of the Great Resignation. Some action was taken in February by council. We'll talk about that impact, but that's something that's continuing into next fiscal year. The countywide revaluation for Guilford County, that has a drastic impact on every citizen and their tax values. The last Guilford reval was in 2017. And then continued restoration of budgets to pre-pandemic levels. The current year's budget achieved some of that, but there's still some other growth we're hoping to restore and see as we continue to get kind of to a budget kind of context of post-pandemic. So overall, the total budget for all funds proposed for FY 22-23 is $464.3 million. I'll note the electric slice kind of at the top of the chart, and then the lower right, the general fund. Those two make up about 60% of the total budget. If you factor in water sewer, that's almost 75% of the total budget. And I will just note in the electric fund, of that $140 million, there's $96 million budgeted for the purchase of wholesale power. And so that's the largest expenditure, and just want to note that that's about 20% of the total budget. Looking at total revenues, comparing the proposed budget to last year's adopted budget, I will note on charges for service, you see that proposed $252 million. That is our largest revenue category. Most of that is made up of electric fund revenues, water sewer revenues, solid waste revenues, a lot of the charges for service from our enterprise funds. And I will note on intergovernmental revenues, some of that is funds from the federal government for transit. It also includes our PAL bill distribution from the state that's used for street resurfacing. And so the total budget is an increase of almost $48 million, or 11.5%. Diving a little deeper into revenues, the proposed budget reduces the tax rate by 3 cents to 61.75 cents per $100 of valuation. There's a proposal for a 4% increase in water sewer rates. There are several fee schedule changes, including parks and recreation fees. This has to do with some changes to the fees for renting some shelters at various recreation centers and parks, some increased green fees at our 2 golf courses, and also some increased fees and new fees at City Lake Park. There's also proposed new fees for fire inspections, fire permitting, and fire violations. And then there's some miscellaneous fees sprinkled throughout several of our departments. Some examples, public services, there's some increased fees for cemeteries. At the library, there's some increased fees or some changes in fees to making copies or acquiring a library card. And even in our clerk's budget, if records are provided to a citizen and they're on a USB drive, there's a cost associated with the city purchasing that USB drive, so there's a little bit of cost recovery there. The proposed budget does not recommend any increases to electric rates, stormwater fees, or landfill and garbage collection fees. A little more detail on the property tax rate. In this proposed budget, 1 cent is the equivalent of $1.27 million. The property tax rate is divided between the debt service fund and the general fund. The debt service fund remains at 3.4 cents allocated to it, and the 3 cent reduction is affected in the general fund, going from 61.35 cents to 58.35 cents. This being a reval year, we need to publish a revenue-neutral tax rate, and that's the rate that would produce the same revenue if no revaluation had occurred, but it does assume natural growth. And so these numbers here are just the key variables in that calculation. The current tax base, which at our current rate produced that current levy of almost $9 million. Then the proposed tax base. So with the proposed tax base and the average growth of 1.87 cents, to get that current levy, it would require a revenue-neutral tax rate of 52.97 cents. Some further notes on the Guilford revaluation. Guilford real property is estimated to increase at 30.9%. The overall tax base is projected to increase at 24.5%. The last Guilford reval was in 2017. The overall tax base grew 4.4% during that revaluation. Looking at the property tax impact, we kind of did a snapshot, just some values of homes, look at what the current property taxes are for that home, factoring in some potential revaluation growth, and then what the rate would be under the proposed plan. And so if you look at the $150,000 valued house, they would be paying on annual, under this new proposed rate, an additional almost $187 annually, or monthly about $15. And obviously, That annual change and the monthly change is going to be indicative of the value of your property and how it changed during the revow, and that's going to vary from homeowner to homeowner. Just for context, U.S. Census data from 2016 to 2020 had the median home value in High Point at $162,000. Current values from the U.S. Census were not available. Just a quick Google search on median home value. Zillow was the first one that came up. They had a listing of $209,000. There were other realty companies that were kind of similar in that range. So while not a government source, that is about almost 30% growth in value. Other revenues, sales tax is growing, been growing throughout the year and is growing in the proposed budget. It's up $3.18 million citywide. Our current year projections have us ending the year a little over 11% over how we ended the year in 2021, which is over $2.6 million. And our projections for 22-23 assume a 4% growth above our projected year end. In talking with other governments, we've seen as low as 3%, and we've seen some higher than 4%. We feel this is a conservative but also reasonable estimate. I wouldn't say we're holding back much on this estimate. On the intergovernmental side, that plus $1.6 million, our transit operating and capital reimbursements make up a large portion of that, and some of that is contingent on what's spent in transit. Our PAL bill allocation from the state is increased by $365,000, and our other special revenue funds, which are other federal and state grants, are increasing $257,000. Charges for service, again, most of these are the enterprise funds, water sewer revenues up $5.6 million, electric up $3.2, and our other funds, central services, health, solid waste, make up that other $3.4 million. Turning to the expenditure side, this is the budget-to-budget growth. I'll note personnel services, that's about 33% of the total budget, and then increasing almost $12.9 million or 9%. Also point to the capital outlay, and so that includes capital outlay like vehicle purchases, but also our large capital projects in electric and water sewer. That's increasing over $11 million or 39%, and we do have some detail here and also in the budget documents which are available on the specifics of those projects. But again, total expenditures matching our total revenues, increasing almost $48 million or 11.5%. Again, a little further deep dive into the increases on the personnel services side. The first two items were salary changes that were made this current fiscal year, back in February, the 2.5% cost of living adjustment and the increase to the minimum hourly rate to $15 an hour. Annualized, that's about $3.2 million that increased our base budget when those went into effect. Additional salary changes that are proposed, an average 3% mid-year merit pay adjustment, an increase in the city's match for 401k and 457 contributions from 1% to 3%, and that's effective on January 1st of 2023. Increased employer contribution to the local government employees retirement system, and this is the city's contribution, and it's just a requirement as direction we're giving from the state on their actuarial requirements. And then increased employer costs to the city health plan, and again, that's on the city side. There's no proposed increase to employee contributions for the city health plan. So I mentioned that increase in the 401k, 457 contribution from the city. So that's one of several benefits that were researched during this budget process. The manager's office, budget and evaluation division, HR, we kind of work together on what's the benefit to employees, what's the fiscal impact, and how do we compare with other municipalities. And the three specific benefits that were researched were the city match to 401k/457 contributions, paid parental leave, and an employee health clinic. And so this chart shows our comparisons. This is the top 10 cities in the state by population. You see the city of High Point is there at the bottom of that table. And so for the 401k 457, we were at 1%, but we're proposing to go to 3%, which kind of gets us into that Charlotte-Raleigh range, kind of in the middle of the range. I'll note the automatic column. High Point's proposal is not an automatic contribution. For an employee to receive the current 1% contribution and the proposed 3%, they would need to contribute at least 1% to get that match. On the paid parental leave and employee health clinic, you can just see the different comparisons, but those benefits are not recommended in the proposed budget. On the position side, the proposed budget includes 11 new full-time and 3 part-time positions. Those first 3 columns, the 2 city attorney's office, the 2 assistant city attorneys, the paralegal, and the 2 fire battalion chiefs, those affect the general fund. The others, the electric position is in the electric fund, the water sewer position is in the water sewer fund, so on and so forth. I will note some of the positions like the water plant supervisor, the solid waste manager, the assistant superintendent in solid waste, stormwater superintendent in stormwater. Those are significant costs, but those include vehicles, and so that's ranging from $25,000 to $30,000 for the vehicles for those positions. Those costs would obviously go away in year 2. In addition to those new positions that are additions to our employee count, we're also proposing to add the following 9 full-time and 2 part-time titles within the general fund. And so our plan is to, in the first quarter of the fiscal year, look at the current vacancy list and identify positions that could be potentially repurposed for these positions. What we'd be looking at is a way to lessen the fiscal impact, not further add to the FTE count, and using that first quarter to evaluate would make sure that any positions that are repurposed would have no impact to citizens or the delivery of services from the departments where they may be repurposed from. On the operating side for expenditures, fuel. So our fleet services buys fuel for inventory. Our departments then buy it from fleet services. These costs and snapshots in time of the cost of regular unleaded do not include federal and state gasoline taxes, but that's what we pay. And so that's why they're less than what you're seeing out for consumers at the pump, ranging from spring of 2021, about $1.61 a gallon to $2.49 a gallon this past February, $3.16 a gallon this past March. Additional changes in operating are fleet charges, and so we've increased our vehicle replacement amount in fleet's budget, and so departments pay into that, and so those charges are going up. Our utility budgets, electric, water, phone lines, natural gas, they're just going up for departments that are using those services. And then inflationary increases, supplies, chemicals, things of that nature, those are increasing, and so we're trying to match the budget with what the departments are going to spend on those type of objects. Looking at capital and capital outlay. On the capital outlay side, this is usually vehicles or rolling stock. And so the proposed budget restores the fire apparatus replacement program, suggesting a dive truck and engine to be replaced. This is something that was kind of deferred during COVID. We were able to fund some fire vehicle replacement as part of the critical items that were deferred during last year's budget when that was approved back in February. And so hopefully getting into the budget so, not to continue the replacement of those as they meet the replacement criteria. In addition, an additional $1 million for fleet vehicle and rolling stock replacements. That brings that budget to about $3.5 million. Again, something that was reduced and deferred during COVID. We're trying to bring it back up to a closer level. And I'll just note that vehicles and rolling stock that met the criteria for replacement totaled about $7 million per fleet services request. On the capital side, the budget restores general capital, $2.55 million, 1.4 of that is funded by the general fund. There's one project that has shared funding through some of the enterprise funds. That's going from 0 to 1.4 million, so that's a big driver of the increase there in capital. On the electric side, 2.84 increase, and that's funded through the electric fund. Water sewers increase, again, funded through that enterprise fund, as well as the others, the transit, solid waste, and stormwater increases. Talking about the capital improvement plan, this is just the total breakdown kind of by area, and it totals $33 million. And the budget documents, which if you didn't see are available in the conference room, the capital improvement plan section has details on all of the projects, not just for FY 22-23, but through 2027, which is our 5-year capital plan. Looking at next steps, this is the current budget work session calendar. Next Wednesday, May the 11th, from 3 to 5 p.m. Thursday, May 12th, from 3 to 4 p.m., and that's an if necessary work session. After the conclusion of this presentation, I'll ask you to set the public hearing date, which would be for Monday, May 16th, which is the next city council meeting. And then we have 2 if necessary work sessions scheduled, Thursday, May 19th and Monday, May 23rd, and those are both scheduled for 3 to 5 p.m. And I'll just note that the budget has been filed with the clerk for public inspection. We'll have a copy down in budget and evaluation. We'll drop off a copy at the library tomorrow, and it should be up on the city's website tomorrow morning. Happy to answer any questions. Oh, there was a question this afternoon's briefing on the street resurfacing budget, and so we were able to research that in between the meetings. The total resurfacing budget for FY23 is $3.3 million. That is the same budget as the current year. It was increased in FY21, but it's remaining the same for FY23.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for staff? Thank you. All right, so I will go ahead then and make a motion for approval of the establishment of the public hearing on the budget for May 16th, 5:30. Also, the establishments of the following dates for city council budget work sessions: Wednesday, May 11th at 3 through 5 p.m., Thursday, May 12th, 3 through 4 p.m. if necessary, Thursday, May 19th, 3 through 5 p.m. if necessary, Monday, May 23rd, 3 through 5 p.m. if necessary. The public should know that all the budget work sessions are open to the public, as of course will be the public hearing, which will take place at our next meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion on the establishment of the public hearing or the work session dates? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of approval, or in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Before we get to the minutes, we have a couple of items that I need to add regarding a purchase of a piece of property. So I'm going to make a motion to suspend the rules to add 2 items related to the city's purchase of real property. Is there a second? There is a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. First item is I will make a motion to approve a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a contract for the purchase of real property at 300A Oak Street and 331 West Russell Avenue for the price of $3 million.
Second.
Okay, there's a second for that motion. Are there any questions or observations on that item? Did I say that right, legal staff? All right, good. All right, all those in favor of approval of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. The second item is a budget amendment, which is attached to the piece of paper you got. I think there's a typo in there that says $3.5 million. It should be $3 million. This is a budget amendment for the allocation of the, let's see, it's American Rescue Plan funds that we're using for this. Isn't that correct, Mr. Almeida?
Yes.
Yeah, so this is a budget ordinance that would authorize the use of those funds for the purchase of the property in the amount of $3 million. And I move for approval of that budget amendment. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any comments on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. All right, we have some minutes to be approved. Are there any proposed changes to the list of minutes? Okay.
If not, I make a motion to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the list of minutes in the agenda. Any comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Any final comments before we adjourn?
Good night.
Happy Mother's Day to all you mothers out
May the
there.
4th be with you.
The fourth be
May the 4th.
the fourth be with you. Okay.
One quick thing.
Yep.
Thank you, Councilman Jefferson, for participating in Operation Inasmuch. I was unable to be a part of that because I'm still dealing with a bad will, but I heard it was a success, and I want to say thank you to them and staffers and all volunteers and organizations that took part. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, did somebody make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make it.
Mr. Jefferson beat you to it, seconded by Councilman Moore. All in favor of adjourning, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. That passes unanimously. We're now